My fiance gave away all of my K-pop albums that I've been collecting ever since I was a kid, with most of them being sold off on eBay or Mercari, as my fiance felt they were childish and I didn't need them anymore, as he made a decision for me that I was completely against. And now at this point, I feel completely betrayed and I don't know if I should break up with him or not, because right now I feel very violated. Here's what's going on. Okay, I'm a 23-year-old female and my fiance, who's 24, has been dating me for about 9 years, and recently we got engaged. During that time, I was majorly interested in K-pop. I still love it to this day, but not to the extent of the 14-year-old me. Ever since I gained interest, I started collecting albums. For those who don't know, typically K-pop albums include CDs, posters, randomized photo cards, and other collectibles that are related to a new album or a single release by the group or a soloist. I don't collect them much anymore as an adult, but I still find a lot of joy in it. Well, my fiance and I planned on moving in together after we graduate, which we both just did. He was helping me move out of my mom's house when he saw my box of many K-pop albums from like the 2nd to 5th generation groups. He then started talking about how his sister really liked the same groups, how I don't need these anymore, and how some of these could make us a lot of money and all this other stuff. I then explained to him that I would like to still keep them, and that a few of them were especially important to me because they were given to me by my late father. Well, after I finished packing up, we took the boxes out to the apartment we had rented and wouldn't start unpacking until the next day. Now, I had to work the next day, so I asked him to unpack everything while I was at the office, and then we would organize them together when I got off that evening. When I got home, I noticed everything was still packed except for one box, namely the box that had my K-pop albums in it. Now, I was confused, so I went to go look at it, and there I saw that none of my albums were in the box. My fiance wasn't home, so I called him and I asked him about it. He said that I didn't need them anymore and that it was childish. So he gave a majority of them to his little sister, and the rest of them he said he's selling them because he says some of these albums are worth like up to $500. And when he said all this, I didn't say anything and I just hung up on him. I cried for hours because one of the albums he gave away was the last thing my father ever gave me before he died. Not only that, but he gave away things that I've been happily enjoying for years. I contacted Mercari and eBay to see if they could cancel the orders and give me back my things, but so far I've heard nothing back from them. I feel like a loser being upset, and I've even contemplated splitting up with him over something like this. But as an autistic person, I found so much joy and passion in collecting K-pop albums, and they're really something that I'm happy with, and I really just want my things back. So am I overreacting here? Because right now I'm still incredibly upset. Okay, in my opinion, this is not someone I would ever want to stay with. You're telling me that your fiance made this decision for you, despite the fact that you told them, no, I want to keep them. Like, are you kidding me right now? This guy violated everything you literally just told him and decided, no, I'm gonna do it anyways. You don't need them, it's childish. But it's like, dude, who are you to say what is or isn't childish? Because as far as I'm concerned, even if you don't like those things anymore in the way that you did when you were younger, there's nothing wrong with still collecting them and keeping them as like, I don't know, like collectibles that you might sell in the future. So this literally is a collection that, yeah, it's worth a lot of money, but instead of respecting that, this guy just walked all over it and said, no, I'm gonna sell it because you don't deserve to have it. And that is a red flag I would never ignore. Like, for example, I used to play with Pokemon cards a lot as a kid, and I still have a lot of them to this day. Like, I've got them packed up pretty nicely, and I don't necessarily enjoy that as much now, but it's still a really important part of my childhood, and like, I really enjoy it. It's fun. Like, who cares? If my partner then turned around and said, oh, I sold all of them, you don't need that anymore, you're an adult, I would probably lose my mind and break up with her. Like, that's so uncalled for. And the same applies here. Like, I would never want to be with someone who's gonna do that, especially over something that clearly has sentimental value. Like, that is so messed up, because this is a huge red flag I would never ignore, and in my opinion, you shouldn't either. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Would I be the jerk if I refused to pay back someone's share of a stay in an Airbnb that we all booked months in advance? Because after he bailed on our plans right before we're about to travel, I'm honestly left in a spot where I feel really bitter about this and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so me and a group of friends are planning a vacation. After we booked plane tickets, a friend of ours, let's call him Jack for the sake of the story, who we had invited previously and at the time said no, decided he actually wanted to come as well and book tickets. But he said he was going to be still doing his own thing thing and not join us for a lot of the stuff that we were doing, like specific cities we're visiting besides the country's capital. So the main 5 people continued having regular calls where we decided things about the trip and booked stays and tickets for all sorts of things. Jack was not participating in these because he said he didn't want to go to these other cities. When it came time to book the stay in the capital for the last week, one of us sent a message to Jack and asked him if he wanted to stay with us. He said yes, but didn't join our call, and when we asked if he was okay with the specific Airbnb, he said it was okay and then paid his share. Now, about 2.5 months later, which is also 2 months before the trip, he messages one person in the group telling him that he's changing his plans and doesn't want to stay in the place that we booked. When asked about the money, he said he would like his money back, but he guesses it's up to us. And for reference, it was about $60 per person. Now, here's the thing. We booked it being conscious of our budgets. Some people in the group are more careful with money. The specific Airbnb we picked would have the same price for 5 or 6 people. So if we were booking for 5 people, we would not have picked this one, and we would have gone with a much cheaper option. If we are to cancel the Airbnb, we would only get about half the money back. So canceling and scheduling another thing would be more expensive and thus not an option at all. Well, Jack did not address the group collectively, and he only messaged one guy, who I was with at the time, so I saw the entire conversation. Now, when Jack was asked why, he said something about changing his plans, like maybe he just didn't want to stay in that city the same amount of days that we did. And in fact, my friend suggested him staying with us just for the days that we were going to be in the city, and yet he still said no because it was too much paperwork. Now, the supposed paperwork in question is just a form that the Airbnb people requested us to fill in with a passport picture and some of our information, namely our names, address, etc., which is generally requested in any place you'd be staying in that country. So my friend questioned, how is paperwork the problem here? Because that literally would be taken care of in like 5 minutes just to fill it in. Jack then said something like, look, I just want to do my own thing. It's nothing against you guys. Now, the likely outcome is that we will pay the money to him, and I personally don't mind paying, but I don't know what could be the correct choice. I just wanted options here because honestly, I need to know, would we be the jerks if we refuse to pay him back, especially this close to our trip? Because right now we're honestly confused and we don't know what to do. Okay, I'm gonna say this nicely. The second someone like Jack comes into the group and is like, oh, I'm gonna do my own thing, that's a pretty good indication that they are not reliable and they're not gonna be involved in anything you're doing. So there's no point in being like, hey, stay at our Airbnb for like a night, because then crap like this happens. 2 months before the trip, they're like, oh yeah, I wanna cancel. I don't wanna be in this group anymore. Sorry, I'm gonna do my own thing. And yes, of course I want my money back. Are you kidding? In most cases, like Airbnbs are not that easy to rearrange, and the fact that this whole thing is gonna like increase everybody's cost for it is really not fair. So yeah, I think the original poster has pretty much got it figured out. I guarantee you're probably gonna have to like pay for what he didn't want to pay for, and then everyone else is gonna have to chip in money just to like compensate, and that is so annoying. So no, in my opinion, I think you would be completely justified, but I know that it would probably cause only more problems than good, and that in my opinion is just not worth it. An entitled Karen demands that I take a different elevator for me and my dog because she is clearly afraid of dogs. But when I tell her too bad and that I'm gonna do it anyways, she actually tries to put her hands on my dog, as this Karen is notorious for kicking dogs that she doesn't like. And so I decided to get some petty revenge by placing bags of dog crap all over this lady's front door, sending a clear message that this idiot better not mess with me or my dog ever again. Here's how I did it. Okay, so I used to live in this 35-story high-rise condo. There were 3 elevators, and during peak times, the wait time for an elevator was like 15 to 20 minutes at 7 o'clock in the morning and at 5 o'clock p.m. I had a Labrador dog. It was well-trained and well-kept, but he had a series of vet visits after catching an infection that required regular bathroom trips until the medication side effects wore off. So, long story short, I was walking Bubba and picking up poop at least once an hour for 4 days in a row. Now, I live on floor 34, so taking the stairs takes a minimum of 10 minutes either way with no foot traffic, and Bubba, after surgery, definitely couldn't handle stairs. Now, I had one very specific neighbor who was afraid of dogs. I saw her visibly kick other condo owners' dogs to get them off the elevator, and I don't know if she had like a phobia or something like that, but honestly, it's not my concern. But one day I needed to get Bubba downstairs, and she had asked me to wait for the next elevator. Mind you, this is at 5 o'clock p.m., and I've been waiting for like 15 minutes. But you know what? I told her to deal with it. I had Bubba sitting in the corner to try and be nice, but I saw her try to grab my dog. I then stood in between them as the elevator went down, and I said no, not a chance. And then I let Bubba do his business once he was outside. I bagged it up all before going back to my unit. And it's at this point I decided to get my petty revenge. At a critical juncture, I decided to keep the poop bags going forward, and I would tie them on her doorknobs or even place them outside of her door on the mat. And I'm doing this as revenge for trying to grab my dog and physically kicking other dogs. I know it's wrong, but I do not care. And by 8 o'clock the next day, there were 10 steaming hot bags of crap on her front door. They were generic white bags, and after that morning, I switched to black backpacks to avoid any condo board repercussions. And yes, again, I know it's petty, but come on, don't kick other people's dogs, especially ones that just had medical care done, just because you want a private elevator. It simply doesn't work like that, and you're definitely not going to treat my dog like that. Okay, I love this so much because this is fantastic. Like seriously, I understand people not liking dogs, but like holy crap, you're living in a high-rise full of people. You can't really expect to have not only a private elevator, but also not like run into some pets every now and then. And this lady was like kicking dogs and stuff. Like that's crazy to me. That doesn't make any sense, and I just can't blame you for wanting to get back at her. So yeah, I think this is funny. I think it's well deserved because this entitled Karen absolutely had it coming. My mother-in-law demanded that I get rid of my cat after she came with suitcase in hand for a surprise, unexpected, and uninvited trip to our house. But after I said no, she freaked out on me as she stormed out of my house in a way that I don't think I will ever forget anytime soon. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm 38 years old and I'm a structural engineer, and I live with my husband and our cat. Well, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced this weekend on Friday with her suitcase, calling it a holiday. She's always hated that I have a cat, but this scenario was completely unexpected. My mother-in-law can't stop visiting unexpectedly or even uninvited, and she's compared my cat to termites, mold, and even said that if you let an animal wreck your home, how can anyone trust you to build a safe structure? But I've worked for over decades to build my career as it is, and she reduced all of it to an insult over my cat, a pet in my own home. But here's where things get really weird. Yesterday night, she gave me an ultimatum. She said to me, "It's either me or the cat. If you really care about this family, you'll prove it by getting rid of it." And those were her exact words. But I told her that the cat stays. This is my home. You don't get to walk in and decide who lives here. When I said that, she screamed that I always need control and just locked herself in the guest bedroom. And this morning, she actually left without saying a word. My husband is stuck in the middle and I just can't get past the grudge. And for me, it wasn't just her dislike of the cat, but in reality, it was her trying to tear down my work, my stability, and my sense of family. Because this woman just shows up to someone else's house and thinks that she can evict their pet. And that simply just doesn't sit right with me. Okay, I gotta be completely honest with you, your mother-in-law sounds like an idiot, and I just can't believe that she's even allowed back in your home. Not to mention that your husband sounds spineless. Like, why is he sitting here letting this happen? What's stopping him from stepping up and being like, okay, you're not gonna talk to my wife like that, that's enough? Like, is he really gonna sit by and be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm stuck in the middle, I don't know which side to take. Because this is an easy one. You take your wife's side and you recognize that your mom is being a weirdo, showing up to the house unannounced with a suitcase, trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm on holiday now. It's like, no, you were actually just leaving. You can't just come over unannounced. So good for you for standing up for yourself, and really, I hope she doesn't come back because that entitled attitude has no place in anybody's house. Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend if we can leave her parents' house, as we tend to stay way longer than we should, which takes away from our time to properly feed our dog? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm crossing a line by asking, and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my girl's parents had her when they were a lot younger than my parents, so she has 2 younger siblings. And so, due to this, we go over to her house for all the holidays and just generally a lot more often. Her parents are also more attached to seeing her often, as she always lived close and never was far until she moved in with me. And by the way, all of this is completely understandable and I am for it. I want her siblings to know their big sister is always there for them. Anyways, we probably go out every other weekend or so for dinner, often from around 3 to 5, and end up usually staying for at least 4 to 5 hours, which is about when I start to get antsy and a bit tired. Tonight, I was honestly about to fall asleep on the couch, and I told my girlfriend I was super tired, and I asked if we could possibly leave soon. She said yes in a few minutes and then proceeded to have another drink, and then I look up and about 45 minutes have gone by. I was starting to get a bit upset as we had yet to feed our dog for the night, and I knew that if I didn't speak up, we would have been there for like another 2 hours at least, and I likely would have fallen asleep on the couch. I really like her family, but every time we go over there, it almost like she forgets that I'm even there, especially when her friends are there too. She'll maybe check on me every hour or so for like 30 seconds, and I'll go into the kitchen where she's hanging out far more often to try and engage with what she's doing. But usually it's not easy to be in these girl conversations for very long. I hate having to ask her to leave. I try to just let her know by being like, hey, I'm really getting sleepy and we still need to feed our dog, but I often find I do have to press it a bit, or I'll just genuinely fall asleep on the couch. Also, I have to drive home every time and we live 30 minutes away because my girlfriend doesn't have a license yet. She knows that she needs to learn, but it's honestly going really slow. Now, she never asked to leave when we're at my parents' house, but I feel like I'm always watching to notice if she's feeling tired or just isn't having fun or something like that, just so she doesn't have to awkwardly ask me. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I just don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk. I think your girlfriend is just not paying attention to you, and that's not fair. And I totally understand what you mean. Like, you don't know these people that well. You're not friends with her friends, so you're like almost the odd one out, literally just sitting on the couch being like, okay, when can we figure this out? Like, what's going on right now? And for me, the most bothering part of this is like, dude, you have a dog you need to feed. Like, that's a serious responsibility, and the fact that she's ignoring that is really alarming and not okay in my book. So no, you're not the jerk for asking to leave because you've got responsibilities you need to take care of. And she needs to realize that sooner than later, especially for the sake of your dog. Am I the jerk for not answering the door when my ex's mom showed up at my apartment unannounced? Because after she's pulled this stunt twice, where she's driven 9 hours just to see my children, I'm at a point where I'm very frustrated and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so this happened a couple of years ago. I have sole custody of my children, and my ex and his family live about a 9-hour drive away from me. One day at around 9 o'clock in the morning, there was a knocking on my bedroom window. I peek through the bottom of the blinds and I just see a woman's sneakers. So I peek higher and I make eye contact with my ex's mother, and all I'm thinking to myself is, what in the world is going on right now? The apartments where I live are not gated, so anybody can drive onto the property, just not go into the buildings without a key, which means my ex's mom couldn't knock on my door because she couldn't enter my building. Anyways, now that she's seen me, I change and get some clothes on, and I go out to see why she's even there in the first place. Now, the only reason why she has my address is because a few months back, she asked to mail some stuff for the kids, and I just dumbly gave her my address. When I get out there, she tells me that she was in the neighborhood. I then asked her why she didn't call me before arriving, and she said it was a last-minute decision. So I let her in and she sees the kids for just a little bit. When she leaves, I tell her that next time she needs to give me a heads up before arriving, and I'm not talking 10 minutes beforehand. I need at least 1 week's notice just so I know what's going on. And so with that bit in mind, this is where I might be the jerk. About 4 months later, she pulls the same stunt again. When I hear the tapping on my window, I know exactly who it is. I don't even bother looking out the window. She then starts calling me like crazy. And after the 5th time of her calling me, I eventually answer. She tells me to open up because she wants to see the kids. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not even home. And why didn't you tell me that you were coming? I tell her that I'm 45 minutes away visiting my dad with the kids. And when I say this, she demands my dad's address. And of course, I refuse to give it to her. I tell her that I have no idea when I will be home. And yes, this is all a complete lie. Anyway, she doesn't believe me and she says that she thinks I'm home. And again, says it was a last-minute decision. But at this point, I just hang up on her. And now I'm getting text messages from my ex demanding that I let his mom see the kids. But I just tell him exactly what I told her. I'm not even home. Well, imagine my surprise when I hear the police banging on my door a few minutes later. But of course, I don't answer the phone. And then, like clockwork, I get a call from a random number, which is the police officer in question. He's there to perform a wellness check because my ex's mom hasn't heard from me in 3 days, and apparently she's extremely worried. Also, according to him, it's illegal not to answer the door when a police officer knocks. I then tell him that she is lying. I just spoke to her on the phone and she showed up unannounced. I also told him that I made it clear to her not to do that again, and that I'm out with family and that I don't need to come back just because she showed up unannounced. She is my ex's mom and I don't have to talk to her. Well, after that phone call, I get a text message from my ex calling me a jerk and how hard it would have been to let his mom see the kids when she drove all the way there just to see them. Now, I really want to make one thing very clear. I don't mind her visiting. I don't mind her being around my kids, but I can't stand her showing up unannounced and demanding to see my kids just like that. It feels like she's on some kind of weird power trip and I am not in favor of this. So am I the jerk right now? Because honestly, I don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, holy crap. This lady called the cops all because you wouldn't answer the door. And I've also got to say, I don't know what country this person's from, but in America, you absolutely can ignore a police officer knocking at your door. You don't have to answer that. That's absolutely your right to ignore them and be like, no, I'm not answering it. Like, I'm sorry, this is America where I'm from, and you absolutely have every right to deny them entry into your house or to even acknowledge their existence if you feel you need to do that. Just wanted to put that out there as a sidebar because that part really pissed me off when this cop was trying to be like, it's illegal not to answer the door when I'm knocking, because it's like, dude, that's not even the case. What is he talking about? But what's more alarming in my opinion is the fact that the mom literally weaponized the police against you. She tried to be like, oh, do a wellness check. I haven't heard from her in a while. Meanwhile, you literally have a phone record that says, yeah, I talked to her earlier in the day. She's insane. Like, think about it for a second. This lady's driving 9 hours to suddenly see the kids out of nowhere. And she doesn't even go through like typical means to make that happen. She's knocking on the window like a creepy person and being like, oh, please let me in. I want to see the children. It's like, no, I want to see you get away from my property. So no, you're definitely not the jerk here. Your ex's mom is crazy, and the fact that anybody's taking her side is just baffling in my opinion, especially when she's calling the cops for illegitimate reasons. Today, I resigned during a big meeting with a huge client after spending years of being underpaid and overworked, putting me in a situation where nowadays my career is entirely popping off. Here's how it happened. Okay, so some years ago, I worked at a digital agency who was actually a big player in the national scene. It was me who was responsible for maintenance and availability for software used by our core clients, and I ran the team who did the same for other clients. Year after year, I got denied raises or got a pay raise that was just laughable. I asked so many times for a partner or a sidekick as I was drowning in work, but they didn't feel the need as I was able to still keep it running while I was simultaneously running myself into the ground. Well, eventually, here comes the 6-month performance review, and yet again, I voiced my concerns about my well-being and financial situation, and yet again, I was denied anything. But unbeknownst to them, I was offered a position at a competitor, granting me better pay and better workloads. After the performance review, we had an in-person meeting with the second biggest client for contract renewals, and as I was responsible for maintenance, I was also included to give my input on the conditions and pricings. During that meeting, I was reading the offer which my manager saw, mailed the competitor I accepted their offer, got the contract in my email within 5 minutes, and digitally signed it within 10. I then mailed human resources, my manager, and some executives my resignation. And fun fact is that all the executives that I mailed were also in the meeting itself. Well, it didn't take long for faces to turn red with anger because they literally paused the meeting. I got pulled apart and got questioned about what I'm doing, but then I explained my side of the story, and I was met with utter disbelief. My manager and human resources got chewed out, I got better pay and better working conditions at the competitor, and the client renewed their contracts that year, but left the year after because of inadequate maintenance and the company not being able to meet like 99% of the uptime. But I can honestly say that my career is now popping off. My old employer is downscaling business because of the harsh market, and honestly, I don't think I've ever been happier in my entire life. Okay, this takes some serious guts, dude. Like, the original poster is brave beyond recognition because there's no way I would ever feel comfortable doing that. Like, this guy literally went out of his way to do this in the middle of the meeting, sending off an email saying, hey, I'm quitting, by the way, only to then have everybody look up and be like, what are you doing? Which is like the perfect opportunity for you to be like, oh, finally, I get to get back at these people. This is exactly what I wanted. So truly, this was a great way of handling this because your manager and human resources absolutely deserve to get the blunt end of a stick, especially for overworking you and underpaying you for so long. Like, you do not deserve that, and that is absolutely unacceptable.
An entitled spoiled brat freaks out wanting a new toy on the toy aisle, but I step in and buy the last one in stock for quite a while, and I honestly could not be more satisfied, leaving the store with toy in hand, hearing that little goblin scream at the top of his lungs. Here's what happened. A few years ago, while working overseas for the military, I was doing some quick shopping at my base exchange. While standing in an aisle looking at some cleaning items, I began to hear in the distance the sound of what felt like a screaming bat or a goat hybrid that just proceeded to get louder and louder. I looked out of the aisle to possibly spot this cryptid, but just saw a screaming little boy being pushed in a shopping cart by his mom. People around them were looking annoyed as the kid was practically screeching at the top of his lungs over and over again, I want it! I want the big gun! I want the big gun! And pointing at the toy aisle a few rows down. While passing by me, I overheard the mom telling her son, not now, sweetie. Mommy has to get to the makeup counter. We'll pick it up on the way out. And honestly, this just rubbed me the wrong way. Not only was this mother okay with how her son was acting, but she was also going to reward him for it. I then got curious and decided to go to the toy aisle to see what this big gun was. I turned the corner and I immediately saw what he was talking about. And I'll give the kid credit. He has some good taste because on the shelf was the biggest Nerf gun I've ever seen in my life. This thing was literally just a straight up minigun. It's comparable to the one that the heavy weapons guy used in Team Fortress 2. After spending a few minutes admiring it and daydreaming about how I would have absolutely destroyed my friends in Nerf gun fights if I only had this monster in my arsenal, I then realized this Nerf gun was the last one on the shelf. I immediately grabbed it and then found a store employee to ask a few questions. I went up to them and I said, excuse me, can I ask a few questions about this toy real quick? The employee happily obliged, and I said, is this the last one that you have? Like, is there any more in the back? The employee says, well, let me check. They then leave to go to the back of the store for a few minutes, and then returns to tell me the best news possible. The employee says, okay, yeah, that one that you're holding is the last one of that toy that we have. I also checked on our computer, and there also doesn't seem to be any more in stock at our closest store or the one online. So if you want to get it, you better get it now. I also don't think think we're going to be getting any other shipments anytime soon. When I heard this news, I looked at the employee and smiling like the Grinch, when he got a wonderful, awful idea, I said thank you. I then immediately proceeded straight to checkout and bought this Nerf minigun. But the cherry on top was what happened after I bought my new toy. I went back into the store to make sure that the mini Banshee knew what I just bought. I found him still in the shopping cart next to the makeup counter, with his mom talking to a salesperson. I casually walked by in front of the kid with a big Nerf gun under my arm, and what happened next was most definitely worth the price tag. The look of shock and fear just completely took over this kid's face as he starts to scream, as well as yank on his mom's sleeves and point at me. I just disappear into another aisle and proclaim that my job was now done. While leaving the store, they must have rushed back to the toy aisle, because I again could hear the ear-piercing screeches of that little goblin coming from the toy aisle. He was screaming over and over again about how it's gone, crying at the top of his lungs. I usually don't like the sound of screeching children, but that might as well have been a live Aerosmith performance, because that was just pure audible chocolate to me. And while leaving, I walked past the guy entering the store, who could also hear this screaming kid with a very confused look on his face. He looks at me and says, "Good Lord, what on earth is that?" I look at him and I say, "It's most likely a mistake," and I honestly could not be happier. This original poster is absolutely my hero. They got back at this spoiled, rotten kid and basically showed that no, you cannot get what you want sometimes. It's always fun to have adult money where you can do stuff like this and maybe just get a little bit of a dig at that spoiled kid in the toy aisle. So honestly, I'm on the original poster side here. I don't think they did anything wrong in the slightest. And if anything, they can probably give that to a kid who would most likely actually appreciate it, instead of that screaming spoiled child who clearly is rewarded for their bad behavior. My fiance doesn't earn enough money to help out around the house, and now, even though he's got a part-time job, he refuses to push for anything better than that, and it's honestly just so frustrating. So my fiance grew up in a relatively well-off household. He used to get money from his parents all the time. He's never really had to work very hard in his life, but now they're no longer able to support him, so instead, he's began to lean heavily on me. I am in no way career-minded. I grew up in poverty, and I have no familial support, and so I guess I'm just hardworking when I have to be, but I don't enjoy it as I struggle with being disabled. I'm financially comfortable, not wealthy, but I can pay my half of rent and bills. I treat us to trips and night outs, as well as gifts on special occasions. He doesn't ever do any of this for me, which so far has been okay, because I thought it was a temporary situation. I don't like my job, and I find it stressful, but I can't just quit. If I do, I won't be able to take care of both of us. I didn't pursue any of my career goals, which would have temporarily plunged us into poverty, because we agreed supporting him in his career would work out for the best if we wanted to have a family. He was retraining for a career in tech. I was okay with this, but it did mean putting on hold making important plans for our future, like marriage, kids, or even owning our own home. Literally years out of my life, I was made to believe it was for the best for our future in the long run. He left his training early for personal reasons, which I completely understand. He's qualified enough to pursue the jobs he wanted. He took on a part-time cleaning job, which has turned out to be very cushy for him, as a lot of time he doesn't have to do anything and has no boss breathing down his neck. It's not enough to pay his way 50-50 or ever help us out in hard times, but he promised it was temporary until he gets the job in the industry that he wants. Something he said would be working on his free time. People are getting laid off left and right here at the moment, and I have no reason to believe that this job might not last as it is anyways. He told me today he's not going to pursue any other better paid work. He says he's happy working part-time at an easy job that doesn't challenge him, and then just coming home and playing computer games. I said this isn't fair on me, and it's just not sustainable. When I said it's unfair and stressful for me to bear the financial burden for the both of us, he suddenly became incredibly hostile. My job could go at any time as well. We have no security like this. I'm feeling the strain, and I didn't sign up for this. We are otherwise happy and harmonious in our relationship. Aside from this particular situation, I love him, but I'm losing respect for him. I'm starting to feel like his mom instead of his fiance. I'm frightened for our future now, and I honestly don't know what to do. So for some better context, the guy in this situation is 42 years old. So his entire adult life, he has mooched off of his parents and used them just so he could stay afloat and and basically do whatever he wants to do. And it sounds like he's doing the exact same thing with you. He's basically using you for money, and he is using your job as a way to stay afloat and basically just live a lazy life instead of being more career-minded and pushing for something more. And I think you have it right. This is just completely unfair for you. I would imagine if I was in your shoes, I would feel pretty burned out, as well as super frustrated that this man that you want to marry is suddenly acting like such a child. I mean, you can clearly see where his priorities are. He would rather go home after a part-time job that's super low stress and play video games than get out there and get a higher paying job so both of you can meet any of your goals. So maybe sitting down with him and reminding him of those goals that both of you have might go a really long way. It sounds like you don't own your own home, and it sounds like you really do want to make a life for yourself. And maybe explain that, hey, this is not going to get us the life that we want, and it's not fair to sit here and basically not be able to get exactly what you want, all because he is not putting in the effort to find that job that's in his field that can pay a lot more. So hopefully this works out for you, because what you're currently describing definitely sounds really frustrating, and you absolutely deserve a lot better. An entitled Karen refuses to turn off her stupid music, and even after we ask her nicely, she turns it around on us and claims that it's her right to play music whenever she wants and however she wants. And she was honestly so unbelievably annoying. So I was on a bus today, and this lady and her son sat behind me. She was playing this gospel song for children on her phone or something like that, and telling her son the story of Daniel from the Bible. She kept playing the same song again and again. During the fourth or fifth time, I turned around and said these exact words: "Ma'am, could you turn down the volume, please? Just turn it down a little bit, please." At this moment, the other passengers looked at me, and I'm pretty sure they were glad somebody finally said it. The woman refused and sounded very offended that I dared to ask her to turn it down. I reiterated that I was asking politely, and she repeated her reaction, still sounding offended. I swear this lady was acting like I went to her private home and asked her to stop listening to music. She then tried to claim that if it was profanity music, I wouldn't complain. But you know what? This lady doesn't know me. She doesn't know what I listen to. All she knows is that I asked her as kindly as I could to turn down the volume. I don't know if it was my age, my clothes, or even the color of my skin. But really, I bet this woman just assumes that if somebody complained about her kid's song, he must be into the devil's music or whatever it is. I thought about playing the most unholy rap song I thought of on my phone at maximum volume, but unlike her, I actually have respect for the other passengers on the bus. She ended up saying that if it bothered me, there were some seats I could take at the front of the bus. And I said, you know what? There is. So I got up and I just left. I then heard her arguing with this guy on the back of the bus, who I think was defending me in the moment. So shout out to this guy for keeping her busy so she wouldn't play that stupid song again. She then proceeded to say that her son was autistic and also had ADHD while talking much louder than the guy she was speaking with. She referred to playing her annoying song over and over again as a personal right, and once again said I wouldn't be complaining if it was profanity music, even though she doesn't know me. I'm glad we didn't leave at the same stop, because I'm not sure if I could resist cussing her out, and I really prefer to not exchange any words with her ever again. Despite wanting to tell her, my reaction for any song repeated several times would be the same, and if I was listening to music, profanity or even Mozart-wise, either way, I'd have earplugs in, and I would not be bothering the people around me, but that wouldn't make a difference on her, because she doesn't need arguments. She's aware she can get away with it, because she honestly is just so entitled. I truly cannot stand people like this. They get on a public platform, whether it's a bus or an airplane or whatever it is, and they play their music full blast. And I'm with the original poster. I don't care what it is. Put on headphones, put in earpods, do whatever you gotta do to make it a private experience. I am not interested in your stupid music, your podcast, or whatever it is. And the fact that this lady tried to profile the original poster and make some kind of assumption about them based on the way they look is truly disgusting. I mean, this guy could have easily just been into K-pop and had nothing to do with any kind of profanity music or whatever veiled, subtle message she was trying to get across, because it was clearly obvious she was trying to make some nefarious comment without getting caught in her words. So hopefully this guy never runs into this lady again, because she honestly sounds obnoxious, and entitled people like this clearly just will never get it. No matter how nice and polite you could possibly come across, they will always think they're in the right. I am struggling with my father's new partner, and I honestly just want her to stop treating me like a child. So I have just recently moved back home with my father due to an ex that caused me to lose my job. It's not ideal and the move wrecked my savings, and my job market is not here, so I'm currently job hunting and expect to be moved out within 3 to 6 months, which is pretty reasonable for the most part. Otherwise, I had not lived at home since I was 18 years old. Mind you, now I'm 22. My mother and father separated this year, and my father has found an old but new flame. I've never met the woman since I moved in so recently, but he's constantly on the phone with her, so it's like she's here in spirit, and it's constant. They are also planning on combining households in about a year. This is fine, and while I'm not pleased with how fast things are moving, she is fine as a person. She has one fatal flaw though. She constantly treats me like a younger teenager, and it's resulted in my father also treating me younger, which is driving me up the wall. They keep making plans involving me without my input, especially her. This would be cute if it did not involve me doing things like living at home forever, or even sharing a room with her daughter, as well as spending literally every holiday with them. I usually juggle between my mom's house, my father's house, or just large family get-togethers. I'm the only one willing to see my mother, as my younger siblings blame her for frankly everything, and that stretches to literally almost every single bad thing. She also, in general, just doesn't want me to move out, and just wants me to be a part of her nuclear family forever. She buys me things that I have zero interest in, and while it's sweet, I genuinely think it's just a waste of money, and she calls me her kid. She also expects me to be at family dinners nightly in the future, and in general seems to view me as much younger than I am, with plans to live at home for much longer than I'd want, or could possibly stand. This has also resulted in my father treating me like a baby when he's on calls with her, and this is something that I've noticed recently. Frankly, my father was an atrocious parent, mentally, physically, emotionally, so him treating me like I have the emotional maturity and mental capacity of a toddler is honestly not surprising, but she somehow makes it worse. It has started feeding into each other and is giving me a headache. I've repeatedly mentioned that I feel too old for a stepmother, and I don't think of her that way, but it's not computing with either of them. Likewise, the constant steamrolling of my wants, as well as my needs as an adult, is driving me nuts. For added measure, I suspect that I might be pregnant, and I am not looking forward to that level of extra smothering. I suspect moving will be my only fix to this circumstance, and this might be the only way that I can reestablish boundaries. But anything else would be nice in the meantime before I beat my boundaries into them with a rolling pin. What should I do?
I think you said it best. I really think moving out is going to be the only way that you can possibly have any semblance of your adulthood back, because they see you moving back in and they only see that 18-year-old girl that lived in your father's house, and that's really unfortunate. You've grown up over these past few years. You are a different person overall, and they really do need to start respecting that. So it's unfortunate that they are treating you this way, and it's honestly just not fair. I mean, you have your own life. You probably have your own bills to pay and your own debts that you're trying to keep up on. And to make it even worse, not only is your dad previously incredibly abusive, but there's a chance that you might be pregnant as well, which is really not a good situation to be in, considering how weird your stepmother and your dad is acting. So hopefully you can move out of there sooner than later, because I honestly don't see this ever stopping unless you do get out from underneath their home. And then maybe once you're away from them, you can try to reestablish some boundaries, because for them to treat you like a kid is honestly just insulting, and they really should see you as an adult and someone who is trying to live their own life. Today I messed up by completely misunderstanding what Secret Santa really was all about, and I honestly feel completely dumb. So for a bit of context, I'm working in Europe, and I was raised in an Arabic country, so Christmas and everything else that comes with it is a complete foreign concept to me. Now, my colleagues are awesome, and I'm really enjoying working with them in the company. The only downside is that when they're extremely tired, their English tends to make less and less sense. We are a small team of 5, and my manager brought it up to me that she wants to do this thing where we will make a game and choose a name, then give that chosen name a gift. I remember I double-checked if I understood correctly. I said, oh, so the whole team is going to buy a gift to that person. Being this conversation took place on a late Friday afternoon, and her being so tired, she said, yeah, sure. I found the concept weird, but I thought maybe it's just like some cultural thing, so I said, yeah, sure, I'm in. We didn't really talk about it since, so today at work, they said they're going to finally play the game to find out who they're going to gift presents to. And I thought to myself, okay, this is cool. We're gonna find out who's that lucky person who's getting the expensive gift. They also also said Secret Santa. I thought, wow, what a creative name for a weird game. So my manager brought a paper bag and the names were inside written on small pieces of paper. She asked us one by one to take out one name each. I thought since there were 5, for every name there are 5 pieces of paper, and the name that's picked the most will be nominated as the chosen Secret Santa, or whatever's actually happening here. I was rationalizing how this is going to end up, with one chosen individual to get the ultimate gift. One girl said she'll go first and that she was so excited, and I was like, what? Why does it matter? It's weird, but sure. This is all my inner dialogue, by the way. I didn't say this out loud. We all picked, and then it was my turn. They're hiding the papers and reading them in secret, and I'm thinking, what's with all the secrecy? I was the one before the last. I put my hand in the bag, and I noticed only 2 papers are left, and this was another moment where I just didn't understand what was happening. I say nothing, and I pick one of them out. It's Celine. She's my favorite colleague, and in my mind, I think that she definitely deserves it. My manager picks up the last one, and I thought it was time to vote. I get excited, and I wait for her to give us the mark. Instead, she asked us to put the papers back in the paper bag and to not forget who we picked. But I thought to myself, why not just put the papers on the table and see who got voted most? But whatever. At this point, I started to feel like I didn't understand the whole thing. We put the papers back in the bag, and then I asked probably the dumbest question without realizing it. I said to everyone, so who did you guys pick? I got Celine. They all collectively looked at me and said, no, you can't say who you got for Secret Santa. Now we have to do it again. I tell them that we're choosing one to give a gift to, right? And now we're supposed to be voting on it. And after I said that, they basically all looked at me incredibly confused. And then my idiot self finally gets it. The realization hit like a truck. It all clicked. I go, wait, so the person I got in my paper is a person I'm gifting, and someone else got my name, so they'll gift me. After one of my coworkers said yes in the most obvious way, I said, oh, now I get it. And at that point, they all just busted up laughing. And now I feel really dumb, as if I only have 2 brain cells left. That is honestly a really funny story, and it's also incredibly wholesome. I guess from the outside looking in, a Secret Santa really would be kinda weird unless you know what's going on. This is honestly just a really cute experience. And if anything, you made that Secret Santa way more memorable. So hopefully Celine enjoys whatever gift you give her, because you've already made this Secret Santa incredibly special. An entitled old man in Walmart hits me with his cart after I wasn't going fast enough in the line I was in, and I honestly could not be more upset. So 2 weeks ago, I was admitted to the ER after having a stroke, and I was finally discharged last Friday, only for my clumsy self to trip on a rug in the lobby on my way out after being discharged, falling directly on my face and banging up my knee pretty good. What luck, am I right? So now I'm back to using a walker since my leg is still hurting and I can't fully straighten it. The next day, my dad and I head to Walmart because we need to get something for his car, and I was looking for some multivitamins and nutritional shakes or whatever. We gather up what we need and head to the checkout line. We didn't have much, literally carrying things in our hands. Well, he was. I had my stuff in my walker, but it wasn't really much. 5 of our things in total combined. Surprisingly, the checkout line we were at wasn't as full as one would normally expect, and we were only 3rd in line before we were next. There's a few closed, and the furthest one away didn't have many people either, and the self-checkout lanes were basically empty. There was another cashier next to our lane, but was closed, as she was about to go on break, and that's when the entitled old man comes in. He comes around with a cart full of whatever, and makes his way to the now closed cashier, to which she explains that she was bagging up her last customer, stating that the lane was closed. The old man grumbles and mumbles about the lines being too long, even though they weren't, and after looking around to see the other lanes, he decides to get behind me instead. Now, the cashier at our lane was busy making small talk with her coworker, not really paying attention to the customer, waiting for the transaction to finish, as they had swiped their card ready to pay. This entitled old man pipes up and he says, "Hope they're having a nice conversation," but not loud enough for the cashier to hear him. But no one really pays attention to him. He sighs loudly, then proceeds to step next to me and ask, "Hey, you mind letting me go ahead? I'm in a bit of a rush." Again, he has a full cart, whereas my dad and I only have 5 or so items. I respond by saying, "Sorry, but so are we, and we don't have a lot of stuff. We won't be long." This entitled old man decides that this isn't an acceptable answer and mumbles to himself some swear word as he steps back behind me. The cashier finally finishes with the customer up front. One more to go, and now my
my dad and I are second in line. As we slowly move forward, this entitled old man pushes his cart forward and hits the back of my legs, shouting, "Hey, move it already, hurry it up," as if it's somehow my fault it's taking too long. As mentioned before, I had fallen and I was still pretty hurt, so I let out a yelp, and my dad instantly spun around in a panic, as did the cashier and the customer in front of us. I turn and I glare at this old man, and his face is turning a shade of red with an angry scowl. My dad yells out, "Hey, what's your problem, man? What are you doing?" People notice what's going on and put two and two together. The cashier says, "Sir, if you can't calm down and wait and stop causing a disturbance, I'll call security and I'll have you escorted out." This finally puts the old man in his place, because he turns and shoves his cart to the side and steps out of line. He screeches, "You all are taking too long," and walks away instead, thinking that he's won, only for us to see him come back for his cart and get in a different and longer line as we are leaving the store, which honestly was just a huge waste of everyone's time. People at Walmart, man, they are just so unhinged. And it's so weird that this guy would act like this, especially when there's a guy in front of him who can barely walk, and there's clear indications right in front of him that this guy is injured and he has things going on. So hopefully they don't have to deal with this guy ever again, because he sounds unhinged as well as just a little bit crazy. An entitled crazy Karen freaks out on me and accuses me of reselling baby formula that I'm simply just trying to buy for my child. And when I try to get away, she follows me around the store, screaming at the top of her lungs that I'm stealing from her. Here's what happened. So first, a little backstory. My wife and I had our first child this year. It was a heck of a year for a child that needs to have formula too, by the way. We are always searching everywhere near us for formula every time that we start running low, and we will usually try to grab 2 of the largest containers we can get, making sure to keep within the store guidelines on how many they will let customers have. I do want to feed my kid, but I don't want to take from others who may need it also. So that way we can make sure we always have food for him, which leads me to the beginning of the week. We were searching again because our stores were running low and we would need more before the middle of the week. Searching for the specific formula that we needed was leading to us maybe having to take a trip out of state just so we could feed our son. We checked one more time through the Walmart app, and one of the locations thankfully in our town had the formula we needed. I rushed over to the store, hoping that they had not sold out. I got there and luckily they had it. I grabbed 2 and I called my wife to see if she wanted me to get more. They had 10 in total, and the store had a limit of 6. She told me to only get 2 because she didn't want others to do without. So I hung up with her and I put them into my cart. And that's when I heard the most shrill voice say, "What do you think you're doing?" I turn around and I see this entitled Karen who looks a little bit older than me. I could be wrong. I've always been kind of terrible at guessing someone's age. She says to give the formula to her because she needed it for her kid and I must just be reselling it. I looked at her and I nervously laughed a little and said, "No, I have a son and he needs the formula." She then just simply replied that she does not care at all and that her baby needs it more. I look at her and again I say, "No, I am taking this because my son needs it. There are literally 8 more on the shelf," while also pointing out that the limit is 6, so she can grab as many as she likes. But she is having none of it and starts pushing to my cart to take my son's food. I made sure to protect it and to move the cart in a way that she couldn't act like I was being aggressive and trying to hit her. I am a bigger man, and some would call me scary or intimidating because I have the kind of face that can definitely be seen as scary looking. So I knew I had to be careful with this weird entitled Karen. This set her off as she started screaming that I was stealing from her and her child, stating that I wanted her child to starve because I was just reselling formula. I walked away before I would lose my cool, and she actually started following me through the store, trying to get people to force me to give her the formula that she needed so badly. She finally found a manager and started trying to keep me there. I simply said I am within the limit, and while she was focused on them, I booked it. She must have looked around because she couldn't find me, and she just started screaming like a mad person. While people were heading towards her, I calmly but with a little bit faster of a pace made my way to checkout and I paid. With my son's food, I got in my car and I laid low for a few seconds, not knowing if she had found me and was just actually following me. As I was pulling out of my spot in the rearview mirror, I saw her running out of the front door, looking wildly to see if I was still there. I pulled out of there while calling my wife to tell her all about this. And let me just tell you, my wife was seething with anger. All all I have to say is thank God that this Walmart is on the opposite side of town. I do kind of feel bad because in the back of my mind, I have the thoughts of what if they really did need it. But you know what? I have to feed my son. That's my responsibility as a parent, and this lady can go get her own. What an absolute psychopath. She tries to hunt you down in the middle of Walmart, pretending like you stole some formula out of her basket. Like, is this lady just crazy or something? She literally could have just grabbed any of the other 8 ones that were on the counter. Like, what is wrong with this lady? I just don't understand why she flipped out. There is literally more formula on the shelf. She probably just wanted to try and grab all of it for herself and be that person that just takes everything. So honestly, to the original poster, don't feel bad for a second. There was literally no reason for her to act like that, and you know what? If I was in your shoes, I would have booked it away from her as well. And I bet you she was projecting exactly what she was gonna do. There's a part of me that thinks she was probably reselling it, which would probably explain why she was freaking out about you taking the formula. So good for you for getting out of there like freaking James Bond or something like that, because this lady is crazy, and hopefully you never run into her ever again. My boyfriend called me spoiled for expecting a birthday gift, and I honestly don't know what to do. I've been dating my boyfriend for over 9 months now. I celebrated my birthday a couple of days ago, and my boyfriend took me out to dinner and watched a movie to celebrate in advance, since he would be busy on my actual birthday. It was a lovely date, and I honestly really appreciated it. Just for some backstory, his birthday was a couple of months ago. I bought him gifts that I put so much thought and effort into, and I really wanted to get him something that I knew he would love. I also expressed to him through random conversations that I don't count food or abstract things as gifts from my significant other because I'm really sentimental as a person when it comes to objects. I love keeping things like movie tickets and even random leaves and things that have significant meaning to me. So I was starting to get the gut feeling that he didn't get me anything because days have passed since my birthday. So I jokingly brought up asking where my gift is, since he showed me a picture of a watch he just bought for himself as an early Christmas gift. When I brought it up, he said, "I don't know what to get you." And when he said that, I felt really sad because I felt like he didn't know me at all. Why does he need to ask me? I put so much thought and effort into his birthday gift. When I expressed to him that I felt bad when he said that, he blew up on me and said I was completely spoiled. And it's like I don't even see the things that he does for me. He said that our dinner date was my birthday gift, and it was too bad for me if I wanted more than that. He was just lashing out at me and blaming me for making it a big deal. How do I even begin to handle this situation? What should I do? Your boyfriend is being a complete jerk. It's really disappointing to see how he's acting towards your birthday. I mean, you put so much thought into the gift you gave him. I think it's then completely normal to expect something in return from him, and you've made it known to him exactly how you feel. Food and abstract things such as gifts just don't mean as much to you as getting something from the heart. And yeah, that's probably a little bit trickier to shop for, or even coming up for ideas that you might enjoy in general, but that's no excuse not to try. So honestly, the way your boyfriend is acting is completely out of line. And if I was in your shoes, I would definitely have a conversation with him, not with the expectation that you want to get a gift or anything like that. I feel like that stage is past and you're probably just not going to get anything, but more so that you can explain yourself and say, hey, this really hurt my feelings. So if you do decide to do that, hopefully it goes well, because your boyfriend's reaction to you asking about a gift is completely out of line, and I honestly don't think you're spoiled in the slightest for expecting some kind of gift on your birthday. An entitled Karen wreaks havoc at a hotel, causing disruptions and making up lies about my fellow coworkers. But after hearing all the constant lies, I simply had enough. So I put her in her place in a really fantastic way, and now as a result, she's choosing to represent herself in a court of law as she tries to sue the hotel. Here's what happened. Since I started as a front desk agent at a 3-star business hotel earlier this past summer, there has been this elderly woman who has slowly but surely descended into complete delusional and harassing behavior. The first story I ever heard of was in our shift notes. She was complaining to one of my coworkers that it was dangerous to have foreigners in the hotel because they apparently to her carry a disease. She later told me that a technical issue with her TV was probably the Chinese. Ridiculous stuff like that. She also said people of color staying at this hotel have complained about her for inching away from them or generally breaking social norms. She also told a black police academy student that she doesn't support his profession while also backing away from him slowly, which put me in a super great position between validating giving this guest perspective that this was a skin color thing while trying not to gossip about other guests. But in retrospect, I should have validated him completely without referencing her other actions, which is a lesson learned for me. Months go by, and every week, this guest requests her folio printed out and sent to her, which is normal, but the way she did it was very rude. She said,
"Can I have my folio, even though your manager overprices the market items?"
or something like that, with a little guffaw to flourish the interaction with passive aggression. Fast forward a couple of months, and she started saying that we're trying to harm her, and that we're being violent, that the engineers threw corrosive acid on her fridge, and that her doctor said she has an infection caused by the chemicals used to clean her carpet. We didn't even use chemicals. It was just warm and maybe soapy water. And then she turned around and said we ought to be cleaning her carpet properly. So she lies routinely about us trying to poison her. She also called the desk one night, sounding like she was choking. The person at the front desk that night called 911 because it sounded like the guest couldn't breathe. The front desk went back on the line with the guest, who was suddenly perfectly fine, and said that she just choked on her coffee. When the front desk told her that emergency services were on the way, she said,
"Oh, let them come,"
and then kept them for upwards of 30 minutes to tell them about the trials and tribulations she faces at our property. She's made one of our night shift workers sob because she threatened to send the worker by the name of Sarah to jail. She has no power to do this, obviously, and Sarah did nothing illegal, but this worker is very, very sensitive and has apparently been falsely accused and consequently faced jail time in the past. So the whole thing was very traumatizing to her. The nightmare guest follows her around during her night shift and films her doing her night shift duties to document her supposed illegal activities. But you know what? I don't think cleaning the pool area is a crime, but whatever. The morning I came in to see Sarah sobbing in the office of this woman's abuse was one of glorious catharsis in the end. The nightmare guest came to the desk while Sarah was still there at the adjacent desk. She asked me to print all 48 of her folios or something like that. I was cold and civil, as I always have been with her. She started talking to me about Sarah's illegal behavior and the false accusations and some other delusional garbage. Sarah is a very petite, high-pitched voiced woman that says sorry way too much, and I was naturally feeling very protective. Our exchange went as follows. I told her not to talk to me about Sarah and that I wasn't interested in what she had to say. She got all huffy and says,
"I am a paying customer,"
as if that means I have to do whatever she wants and be told lies and a bunch of information I couldn't even do anything about, even if it was true. I snap back and I say, "Actually, you're a nightmare." She then gets all angry and shaky in the way that only senior citizens can and says she won't be spoken to in this disrespectful tone, to which I respond, "Oh yeah? How's it feel, lady?" This whole time I kept my voice down to avoid disturbing guests in the breakfast area, which ended up being absolutely pointless. Sarah then starts yelling at this guest for trying to intimidate her, as well as threatening her freedom. I put my hands gently on Sarah's shoulder and very gently pushed her towards the back office and shut the door in an effort to try and de-escalate the situation. Another coworker actually called the police, which seemed extra but whatever, who ended up taking statements from the guest and my manager. All of this happened before 8 o'clock in the morning. We tried to kick her out, but in our region, any guest inhabiting any accommodation for upwards of 30 days have tenant rights. So a formal eviction was filed. She somehow convinced the judge that this should go to a jury trial. There was a hearing about this, and she has been scheduled for a full jury trial. Months from now, she is literally like a stubborn Victorian ghost. She walks the halls all night, and her moods are so erratic. It's really sad, honestly, but mostly just pathetic and annoying. She hates us. She hates the property. She feels harassed and unsafe, and accuses everyone that talks back to her of violence, even if all we do is tell her to leave us alone and stop repeating all these details of fictional events that most of us have no control over anyways. And yet she still won't leave. She is also literally representing herself in trial, which I can't believe is also going to be supported by taxpayer dollars purely by existing. She has also sued multiple major hotels for conspiracy to harm, overcharging, as well as lots of other things. And she has been dismissed every time in the end. She is nothing but a con artist, and I honestly can't wait to see her fail again. Let me just put it this way. If they were selling tickets to this trial, I'd be the first one in line. This lady sounds absolutely crazy, and you are absolutely right. Not only is this going to get dismissed, but if it does go to trial by some miracle, all this mounting evidence against her for being blatantly racist, as well as a menace to the employees that work there, as well as the other guests that occupy the hotel, all of this will just come crashing down on her. So hopefully she gets banned from this place for good, and you guys never have to deal with her again. Because actions like this absolutely deserve to have consequences. And just because she's some old woman doesn't mean that she should get away with this. My partner is constantly giving me such a terrible attitude and accusing me of things that I've never done in the first place, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I've been with my partner for 8 years now. I think overall we have a very healthy relationship. We generally have good communication and good conflict resolution, even after fighting. We're able to share concerns and feedback in a mature way. That being said, he's been dealing with amplified anxiety for the past 2 years, and it's resulting in some new behavior that I'm struggling to effectively address. He wakes up many days in a pretty bad mood, dreading the workday, and can be very unpleasant. I do my best to give him space to wake up and get ready for his day. However, recently he's been approaching me in the morning with complaints as well as things that he's upset about, and doing it in a very negative way and speaking to me in an unacceptable manner. Sometimes these complaints are related to me, and sometimes they're not. For example, this morning he was trying to implement an IT update that he couldn't figure out. After a lot of complaining, he asked for my help, and I said I'd try my best, but this isn't my strongest area. He stormed out of the room saying, "Fine, don't help me." I calmly followed him and restated that I'm happy to look. I just want him to know that I'm not confident that I'll be able to figure it out. I feel the need to set this expectation to limit his future frustration. While showing me what he was looking at, he was talking to me in an extremely rude way. Just a really terrible attitude, very short and snippy, and even raised his voice. This came out of nowhere, so I let it go for a few minutes. At one point, he made a comment about hating IT, and I reinforced his opinion by saying, "Yeah, this stuff is usually so frustrating." He started talking again with such an extreme attitude that I had to stop him and tell him not to talk to me like that. I know he is frustrated, but he cannot take it out on me. He then started accusing me of being the one with an attitude and being upset. When I questioned why he thought those things, he couldn't give me an answer, and then accused me of thinking he's stupid and giving him an attitude earlier that morning that he was still mad about. I feel like that is a ridiculous example, but some variation happens almost every other morning, and it's really stressing me out a lot. He approaches me in a way that he normally does not, and then completely refuses to acknowledge that he's doing it, flipping it on me 100% of the time, saying stuff like, "I'm not doing that, you are." He does it so often now that I pay very close attention to how I'm responding when he talks to me in this way. He will even go as far as to accuse me of rolling my eyes, raising my voice, or stuff along those lines, even though I absolutely am not doing that. I am by no means perfect, but I'm very relaxed and happy in the morning. I am confident that I'm not instigating any of these situations. Most of the time, I don't acknowledge his behavior in the moment at all. I give calm, short answers to what he says. We've had some productive conversations about this pattern, so it is lessening a little in frequency, but I feel like the intensity is rising. I know he's dealing with external stress, but this is not how he typically treats me. He usually reflects on it afterwards and recognizes he was at least part of the problem, but he continues to do it. It's very hard to deal with in the moment because it feels like he's creating his own narrative to justify his own behavior. Most of the time, I can just ignore it, but when he says things that are so clearly made up, it's hard not to take the bait, and I honestly don't know what to do. This is really unfortunate because based on what you've described, your partner really is being very toxic, and it really does sound like therapy of some kind might be really useful in helping him sort this out. There really is so much you can do in this situation. You've had a discussion about it. He even admits that he goes too far sometimes, and yet still he does it all over again. So it honestly overall is just really unfair for you. So hopefully all of this works out and you're able to find some kind of solution to this, because you honestly should not be talked to like this, and he really does need to straighten out his attitude. An entitled Karen tries to get me fired because her Thanksgiving turkey isn't available right then and there, claiming that I told her the wrong date and that I had forced her to order the turkey in the first place. But thankfully my coworker had my back and put this entitled Karen in her place. Here's what happened. So I work at a grocery store that prioritizes older people with health problems, immunocompromised people, and people with special diets. As Thanksgiving began to roll around, we opened a program for our customers that would allow them to pre-order their Thanksgiving turkey. Because the program sounded a bit confusing on the outside, and a lot of customers don't read the posters to pre-order right in front of their face, we were trained to ask every person checking out if they wanted to pre-order and explain the program to them if they said okay. There was even a reward for the cashier that got the most people to pre-order, but to be honest, I wasn't too interested in the reward. Like every special event in the store, I ask if they're interested because I'm required to, and if they say no, I say okay and I hand them their receipt. Close to Thanksgiving, the pattern became muscle memory. I welcome them to my register, I ask if they're a member with us, ask if they want to pre-order their turkey, and hand them their receipt. Because of how many people I see a day, I tend not to remember anyone's face or information, nor do I care to remember something that's not for me to know. So this happened out of the blue, and I was utterly confused at first. Flash to the past, and I'm checking out an older woman who hands me a jug of orange juice. She asked me if we had more in the back because the shelves were empty. I didn't know for a fact if we did because I spent my entire day at the registers, but I knew we didn't get a new shipment until tomorrow, so most likely everything was on the shelves already, and only overflow products were in the back at this point. I told her that we could do a personal order for a case, and she filed out the order form. The thing about order forms in my store is that they can easily be misplaced. Because we're understaffed and the registers can't be unattended, I wasn't allowed to walk the form to the receiving room, but I knew at the end of every day, the registers were cleaned and anything that didn't belong there, such as product returns, things that need to go back on the shelves because someone didn't want them after all, garbage or damaged items, stuff like that, they were all taken to their proper locations. So I slipped the order form on top of the register drawer so it wouldn't be missed when they were cleaned. This will be important later. After we finished with the order, I asked if she wanted to order a turkey and she agreed, so I pulled up the pre-order list and had her fill out her information. I repeated back the pattern I had by now, so I said to her, the turkeys will come in the last 2 weeks of November. We won't call you because there are too many people on the list, but just come in when they arrive and bring your receipt with you. It's okay if you lose it though, because your name is now in the order book, so we can look it up and see what turkey size you got. I repeated this so many times, it was literally impossible for me to have said anything different. After finishing up, I moved on. For that order sheet, I was told a journey that it went on from a fellow coworker. After he cleaned the registers that night, he found the order and went to bring it to the manager's office. The office was locked, so he left it on the cabinet directly next to the office, so it would be found. It was found, and the manager decided to let receiving order the product, so he brought it to the back room and left it on the desk. Unfortunately, the receiving manager had taken a day off and didn't see the form at all. By the time anyone was able to order it, the new shipment had already come in with the product anyway. The only difference was we didn't call her to let her know it was in, because technically it wasn't her request, because the special order was never filled out. This whole incident began the nightmare that was a random woman trying to get me fired. The most insane part though was it happened in 15 minutes while I was on break, and my coworker had to fill me in when I returned. It was the 12th of November this year, and a woman walked into the store. She asked about her order and got a confused look. My coworker said no order was filled out, and she quickly flipped out, saying she filled out the form, and if I didn't give it to someone, it was obviously my fault, and she wanted me fired, or at least severely in trouble. She said I had terrible customer service, and so my coworkers asked me who she meant, because up to this point, she never even said my name, let alone what I looked like. Sadly, she didn't even remember me, which I found a little amusing because I was the only person in the store with vibrant blue hair. My coworker sent someone in the back to check on the product, and surprise, we had the item she ordered anyway, which calmed her down a little, but she still wanted to file a complaint against me for not filling out the order apparently. My coworker refused to do this because for one, he was one of the store managers and I was his apprentice, and two, he knew I didn't mess up anything because he was the one that took the form to the cabinet for the main manager. He finally managed to get her to let the incident go when someone else brought up the case of juice only for her to ask about the turkey. My coworker told her that they hadn't arrived yet, to which she insisted they were, because apparently I told her they would be in today. Utterly confused, he looks at her receipt because nobody knew the exact day they were coming in, but being the 12th, it was too early for any turkey yet. Nobody was saying an exact date at checkout because nobody knew the exact date, not even the manager of the company. The turkey arrivals were dependent on the company that was supplying the turkeys. When she said that I had told her a date, that caused complete bafflement, and then Then he sees the problem. The woman ordered a 12 to 15 pound turkey, and she assumed 12 to 15 was the date of the turkey arrival. My coworker told her that 12 to 15 was the weight, not the date, and she just doubled down, claiming that I told her the date of when it's coming in, and that I needed to get in trouble for telling false information. And also, apparently, I was super pushy about making her order a turkey, and that she was forced to do it. He asked if she wanted a refund for her pre-order deposit, but she didn't want one. She just wanted her turkey and asked if she could have it anyway, which is a big old resounding no. Even if he wanted to give her the turkey, it physically wasn't in the store yet. Her turkey was still at the farm and alive. What does she want us to do about it? Well, this entitled Karen's only solution was to have me fired. It all came back to my fault, and I had to be punished for everything happening to her right now. If she couldn't have the turkey, I couldn't have my job. I'm not quite sure what happened after that. My coworker walked into the break room after the whole situation as I was just about to get up, and he told me to sit down for a minute because of this lady basically having it out for me. We hung out in the break room for a few minutes while he told me what happened. Then he went to go check on her. After he confirmed that she left, he said it was fine for me to go back to my post, and we never spoke of it again. Once the turkeys rolled in and people began to pick them up, the order list was marked off, and I sometimes read through it just to see how many more people needed their turkey still. Before Thanksgiving Day, everyone had gotten their turkey, so she obviously got her turkey eventually, and she never raised another complaint. But I'm pretty sure she was just having a bad day and trying to find someone to blame or something like that. But still, a ridiculous situation that I was happy to be in the break room for. What a weird entitled Karen. I think the original poster is right. They were clearly having a bad day, and they decided, you know what? The person who helped me ordered it? Yeah, they're the person. I'm gonna blame them. I mean, what a ridiculous, horrible person. Using someone as a scapegoat in this way is just absolutely unacceptable, because this coworker is literally just trying to make it through the holidays. And worst of all, they gotta deal with weird entitled Karens like this. So hopefully that lady never comes back into that store, because people like that are just obnoxious, and they honestly just make everybody else around them absolutely miserable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. I'm considering going no contact with my mother because she has spent my entire lifetime being absolutely horrible to me, but I'm afraid of her reaction and I honestly don't know what to do. My mom has never ever been a good parent. It's taken a long time for me to understand that I was and have been abused emotionally and psychologically by her. The biggest issue is that she had zero concept of how much snooping violated my boundaries and autonomy. For as long as I can remember, she has believed that if I had something private that I wanted to keep to myself, I was keeping a secret that was obviously hers to know. This even got to the point, when she still had custody of my sister and I, that I would carry my school bag into the bathroom with me when I took a shower so she couldn't go through it while I was bathing. She read my journals through childhood. I lived full-time with my dad and stepmom until I was kicked out for failing out of college. And then I moved back in with my mom. We lived separately for a while, and I wrongfully assumed that she had a handle on her mental health and would treat me as an adult. But I was wrong. Eventually, I moved back in with my dad and stepmom. I was there for my mom as she battled breast cancer. I was there for her as she went through her several mental breakdowns and ended up in a psych ward multiple times over the years. I sat and let one of her friends, who I assumed was my friend as well, berate me about how I was a bad daughter because I lived away from her. During all of this, my mom moved to North Carolina to be with family friends. At the time, I was having issues with my dad, and once again thought that the time and distance between us had meant that my mom had progressed somewhat in how she would treat me. And once again, I was proven wrong. I moved away from my dad and stepmom, my younger brother, and my younger sister to go to North Carolina and live in the same apartment building as my mother. As you can probably guess, it was more of the same. I was a 25-year-old adult, and she used her emergency key to repeatedly violate my boundaries and my privacy by going into my home, going through my things, telling me that I was a bad person because I had secrets. All the while, she kept reading my journal and was constantly going through my trash to catch me in my supposed lies. Every time she did this, I would confront her, and she would do the classic Darvo maneuver. I didn't do it, but if I did, it was your fault for being a private person, and you're being a bad person by trying to tell me who your father cheated on, that my trust issues are harming you. She treated me emotionally as if I was her spouse. That was her biggest gotcha. Her going through my things, repeatedly proving she couldn't respect my boundaries, was all my dad's fault. Eventually, I put my foot down. I took her emergency key and I stopped talking to her, even though we lived in the same building in different apartments. I was able to find an amazing partner who I love and is going to marry me. My mother knows nothing about her because word would get out and my dad would cut me off from my brother. Right now, I'm living with my partner, having moved in together in July. We're about 5 hours away from my mom and half a continent away from my dad. I don't reach out and contact either of them anymore, and I only answer text messages and calls that they make. My mom told me, "If you don't come back and visit me, I'm going to come visit you whether you like it or not." I had been planning to go visit after the holidays for a few days just to placate her, but you know what? I've decided I'm not going to. After struggling a lot with religion and its role in my life and upbringing, I have fallen away from traditional Christian faiths. I've been doing some surface level research in other areas of my life, trying to find my own path. And today I woke up early and I couldn't go back to sleep, and I spent most of the morning refreshing several websites that talk about other people's experiences with their terrible parents. And now I can safely conclude that seeing all these other experiences and seeing how absolutely delusional these other parents are, I now need to fully cut my mother out of my life. I do worry about what she will say to other people if she finds out about how her daughter is living in sin with a partner of the same sex. She's going to use other people to attack me for that. But as I'm writing this, I think I've decided I'm done dealing with her. I want no more empty apologies for things I know she'll do again as soon as my back turns. I want no more refusal to acknowledge the way she was abusive to me and my sister when we were children. And I want no more feelings like my relationship with her is vital. I'm not really sure how to end this, but my partner supports me 100%, and her family has accepted me without question, which honestly is way more than mine can ever say. This is a really sad situation because your mom is an absolute piece of garbage. She has been manipulative for most of your life, and she would rifle through your things constantly, digging through your journals and your trash at one point. I mean, that is a massive breach of privacy, and it's obviously something you were hoping you wouldn't have to deal with when you decided to move next to her or with her in some cases. So I'm sure that's honestly really heartbreaking. You were obviously optimistic about her mental health, hoping that maybe she can have her stuff together and be more mentally sound moving forward. But she just proves time and time again that that is just not the case. And if anything, she's just choosing not to change in a lot of ways. And in your case, that's just so unfair because it seems like you're very empathetic towards her situation and you obviously want to be there for her and be supportive of your mom because you know what? It's your mom. There's obviously some kind of automatic thought there that says, hey, I gotta protect and help her, right? So it really sucks because I think you can agree that your mom is really not a good person in this situation. So is your dad too, by the way. I mean, overall, you and your siblings have definitely gone through it, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. And it's not like you haven't made attempts to try and be there for your mom when she needs you. But you know what? She has betrayed your trust over and over again. So honestly, if I was in your shoes and I dealt with this much animosity, I probably would cut off my parents as well. You don't have to live your life like that. You've made the effort to try and reach out to your mom, but she's being an absolute jerk about it, and she's being incredibly bad to you and your siblings. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction for you. And I honestly don't blame you for giving yourself some distance and choosing to move on with your life. Today I messed up by telling a waitress that I had already beaten their hot wing challenge once before, and boy do I regret it. So as the title suggests, I like spicy things. I have a large collection of hot sauces at home, and I have tried most of the world's super hot peppers, and I've won numerous hot wing challenges. Usually I'm fine, but as I've aged, occasionally I find my stomach suffers. Nothing too extreme, but a lot of noise and sometimes a bit of a ring of fire. Cut to today of this specific incident. I live in a medium-sized city in Canada. My brother-in-law used to live in another city about 90 miles away, so for context, about an hour and a half by car. This day in particular, we went to visit so we could drive him back to our house for the weekend. Now, we did this pretty often. Usually when we do, we find a restaurant to grab a bite to eat before we head home. The last few times we went, we found a small pub that specialized in buffalo wings. At the back of the menu, they advertised a hot wing challenge where if you finish their hottest wings, you get to eat for free. Without an ounce of hesitation, I ordered the challenge wings. The waitress asked me, are you sure? To which I replied, I like hot foods, and I can't turn down an opportunity to eat free wings. She laughed and got me my wings. Now, the wings were hot, but I had definitely eaten hotter, and so I got my free wings. I paid for my girlfriend's meal, as well as my beer, and we went on our way. In the coming months, I did this this twice more, and each time the waitress would ask me the same thing, "Are you sure?" And each time I would say yes, and every time I would get free wings by the end of the night. It was wonderful. Cut to this last time. We go to our favorite wing place. We waltz in there like we own the place, and we seat ourselves. The waitress, whom I later find out is the owner, comes to take our order. My girlfriend, daughters, and brother-in-law all order, and the waitress turns to me and asks what I will be having. I say, "I'd like to do the hot wing challenge, please." The waitress once again asks me, "Are you sure?" And this is where I messed up. I stupidly told her, "Oh yeah, I've done this lots of times." Dear reader, when you tell the owner of the establishment that you've already eaten a free meal at their place, and now you're just there to fleece them out of another order of wings, they do not take it well. Our previously friendly waitress turns to me and coldly says, "Oh, have you now? Then this should be easy for you." And you know what? It was not. My wings came and everyone's eyes went wide and they leaned away from my meal. Instantly, everyone's eyes were watering and the waitress just smiles with a big toothy grin. She says, "Enjoy," and just walks away. I cannot convey to you in mere words the pain I suffered eating those wings. I took my first bite and it was searing doom. An explosion of nuclear fire blanketed my palate, not unlike what I'm sure the people of Pompeii would have experienced during the eruption of that volcano. My body began shivering and sweating. A river of snot and tears ran from my face. I went to the washroom twice just to cry to myself and question my life choices. But even though no one expected me to finish my meal, I endured. When it was finally over, everyone was silent. We paid without a word and we just left. In the car, my girlfriend asked me, "Are you okay?" When I just nodded in affirmation, she asked, "Are you sure?" And I just looked at her without any expression on my face. We then started our drive home. Again, I would like to reiterate that generally, I don't experience much in the way of after effects from spicy foods. This time, it was completely different. I could literally feel the burn in my esophagus still, right down to my stomach. And my stomach was getting much worse. I was getting bloated and incredibly uncomfortable. About a half hour into this hour-and-a-half drive, I am becoming increasingly uncomfortable to the point where I'm shifting uncomfortably in the driver's seat. My girlfriend again asks me if I'm okay, and I tell her something is off. She suggested that we stop to use the bathroom, which I declined. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I felt like I would rather be at home instead of some filthy gas station when things go down, if you know what I mean. An hour into the drive, and this discomfort is full-on pain. Really, really bad pain. So I step on the gas. I'm blowing well past the speed limit. I didn't care. I just needed to get home. My stomach had decided that it was no longer going to house those abominations, and one way or the other, they were coming out. When we finally got there, I put the car in park and ran to the front door. I fumbled desperately with my keys while everyone else got out of the car. The door finally opened and I vaulted up the stairs 4 at a time while simultaneously undoing my pants. I raced to the toilet, but I was losing this battle. Just as I got to the bathroom, it happened. I got the door mostly closed before it all went down, leaving an unholy mess pretty much everywhere you would expect. At this point, I launched myself into the bathtub and started doing my best to get my clothes off. All the while, I'm violently expelling everything in my body. From both ends, mind you, if you know what I mean. My girlfriend, God love her, came upstairs and with an absolute look of disgust at my vile body expulsions, took my dirty clothes away and cleaned the door, the walls, and the floor. She came back upstairs after starting the laundry and turned the shower onto my battered, burning body. I was cowering in the fetal position as the warm water hit me, still amazed at the lashback a pound of spicy buffalo wings was able to put forth. She asked me in a sweet voice if I had learned my lesson, and I feebly replied, yes. But you know what? I lied, because this would not be the last time that I would eat some spicy wings and absolutely regret it later. I don't know about you, but I cannot handle anything spicy. So the fact that this original poster literally went to Pompeii and back and still came out the other side alive and kicking is amazing to me. But this definitely is a mess up. He had a fantastic deal going where he was getting free buffalo wings, and he practically ruined that in one shot by bragging to the waitress who just so happened to be the owner. So hopefully the next time he finds a new place to get some free wings, he doesn't spill the beans that he's beaten their challenge before. Otherwise, I'm sure this incident will only repeat itself once again. An entitled Karen claims that I'm being racist and that I'm intentionally misguiding her in the store that I work at. She even went as far as to complain to my manager, essentially trying to get me fired. And I'm honestly so annoyed and incredibly baffled. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I had been working for about 4 hours, and by this point, it wasn't too crazy at work. But everything changed when this entitled Karen showed up. She seemed pretty nice, because admittedly, for the most part, she was being nice to me. She was saying that she couldn't find what she was looking for after walking by it a million times. She asked me where I could find the gift cards, and I say while pointing it out to her that the gift cards are on the stand right over there by the checkout. You can ask my coworker who's running the checkout to show you what you need. The Karen then thanks me and goes off on her way. Since I didn't have any customers at the lumber side of my department, I decided to watch this entitled Karen and see her walk right by the stand, all the way down to the service desk, and ask them where the gift cards were. I sighed deeply because she's not the first customer to do this, and this Karen is now walking back because I'm sure that the service desk has told her that it's next to checkout. But even then, this entitled Karen walks back to me and says, "I couldn't find the gift cards." So I told her, "Oh, you just went a little too far. I said it's right next to checkout." She then says, "Oh, well, I just asked them and they said they didn't have any there." And at this point, I'm super baffled. I said, "No, that was not the checkout. That was the service desk. I'll point out the actual checkout and then you can go for it." Again, I point straight to it, even stood in the spot where if you walk straight, you'd walk right into it. And yet again, this entitled Karen managed to walk straight past it and up to the service desk again before coming back to me and asking me again why I'm misguiding her. At this point, I'm getting frustrated, as well as baffled by her inability to not turn and look at the stand I'm clearly pointing at, but instead just repeatedly strolling past it. This time, I point at the checkout sign and then the gift card stand. This entitled Karen then says to me, "I'm getting tired of walking from one end of the store and back. Can't you just go get it for me?" I say to her, "Ma'am, I'm not allowed to leave my register unattended, and I've been pointing out where the gift cards are the entire time, but you kept repeatedly walking by it instead." She then gets incredibly upset and walked off again, mumbling, claiming that I was being racist to her, and that's why I'm apparently trying to make a fool of her. And when she said that, I honestly was blown away and could have never predicted what she would do next. Yet again, this entitled Karen walks right by the stand and goes up to the service desk. She spins around now, clearly mad, and back in my direction, fuming again at the fact that she can't find the gift cards. I am now just super annoyed, and I quickly call Sally, my supervisor, who's running the checkout. She picked up when she saw me waving urgently at her from my register. When she picks up the phone, I say, "Quickly, stop that lady customer. She's looking for gift cards and she's been walking right by it for several minutes now." Luckily, Sally saw the Karen and stopped to show this lady the gift cards, which Karen bought a handful and paid for. All the while, she said something to Sally while glaring daggers at me, as if I had just kicked her puppy. Sally comes over to me and asked why I kept sending Karen to the service desk instead of where the gift cards were. I rolled my eyes, very annoyed, and I said, "I did tell her. I pointed out where the gift card stand was to this Karen many times, but she kept walking by it and just kept going to the service desk instead of stopping to ask for help. I even tried to suggest that I call you so you can help her when she gets to checkout, but she kept saying, 'Oh, it's fine, I could do it myself,' and would just repeatedly walk by it." My manager then says something that absolutely blew my mind. She says that this lady claims that I had sworn at her and that I didn't want to help her because of her skin color, which is honestly really stupid. I told her I never said that. All I said was that I'm not allowed to leave my register unattended, but this lady kept walking by before I could say, "But I can call Sally to point out where the gift cards are. And you know what? If you don't believe me, you can check the cameras." Thankfully, Sally said she did believe me, and she was also on my side, saying, "You know what? What can we do when customers don't pay attention? No matter how much we point things out to them, they'll just walk by it and claim we lied to them." Luckily, the rest of my shift was uneventful, and I was able to leave on time, but I honestly hope I never have to deal with that weird entitled Karen ever again. Some people are just absolutely stupid. The fact that this lady would not only walk by the gift card section repeatedly, and the fact that she doesn't know how to follow simple instructions is completely eclipsed by the fact that she tried to claim that this person was being racist towards her, when in reality, that's not at all what happened. She's just too dumb to find the gift cards. And I mean, honestly, how do you not know how to find the gift cards? I bet you she went up to that service desk and they said the exact same thing. "Oh, they're just by the checkout counter. Like, literally go over there and you'll get what you need." But instead, she tries to pull this arbitrary race card, as if that has anything to do with the conversation. But there is probably no helping people who act like this, because it's super inappropriate to make this kind of outlandish accusation accusation against somebody, all because this stupid entitled Karen is too ignorant to follow even the simplest of instructions. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My boyfriend called me abusive, but then backed down and said it was just an exaggeration, and now I just can't stop worrying about it. Before I start, I want to say that I've already booked back in with a psychologist, and will be unpacking this thoroughly with her too. I'm taking this very seriously. I also want to preface all of this with the fact that my boyfriend is wonderful. We have been together for 6 years, and they have been a joyful 6 years. To put it simply, I love him, and I feel supported and loved by him. That said, he definitely puts his foot in his mouth sometimes. I really hope that all that's happened here is another foot in the mouth moment. For the sake of privacy, I will call him William. The final piece of important context is that I have PTSD from a previous relationship. I am a lot healthier now than I was when I was first diagnosed, but I can still easily feel backed into a corner and have to work hard not to lash out from there, because I believe that trauma is not an excuse for abusive behavior. So if I am engaging in abusive behavior, I need to nip it in the bud, or I need to be single until I am healthy enough to be in a relationship. William knows about the PTSD and some specific details of my trauma, but the further we got into our relationship, the more careful I have been with trauma dumping. I want a partner, not a therapist, and I don't want him to have vicarious trauma. I have had to learn to temper how I speak with people so I don't come across as aggressive. When I'm in distress, I tend to use very strong rhetoric, and I can definitely see how people might feel steamrolled into accepting my point of view. William has always been very rational in these situations, calmly stating where I am relying on fallacies and helping me to define what is really going on so that we can talk it through properly. I already sometimes worry about the emotional labor involved for him there, but whenever I have checked with him before, he has just said that he enjoys that we can communicate so fluently. We were talking about this again recently in the car, and I remember saying that I really appreciated that he could go toe-to-toe with me verbally without letting me get away with outlandish claims. He brought up a specific event where he says I was trying really hard to start a fight, and he didn't want to fight at all. I remember the event, but I don't remember what we were discussing. I do remember feeling at the time like I wasn't trying to fight, but rather be understood. He said that it bordered on emotional abuse, and everything inside me just kind of went numb. I was the one behind the wheel, so I forced myself to focus on the road and asked him what he meant. He said that I pick his most vulnerable areas, and I try to fight. I asked him for an example, and he brought up a recent disagreement that we have been having about our most common reoccurring issues. His tendency to tell me how hot our female friends are, and my tendency to find that upsetting. For example, he will talk about people's butts or thighs, or how pretty they are, and has often told me he is infatuated with someone, but he won't compliment me because he can't objectify people to their faces. Stuff along those lines. I have since asked if my expressing that I am hurt by his infatuations is what he means by picking at his most vulnerable areas, and he said he didn't have any other examples. This left me to wonder if by picking at his most vulnerable areas, he means pointing out things that have hurt me, and thus causing him to feel guilt. But it is also very possible that it's more about how I point things out. We arrived at his house, and I took myself to the bathroom because I was having a panic attack, and I was so worried that it's manipulative to visibly dissolve into a panic attack when accused of abuse. So I stayed in there until I grounded myself, and I came out and tried to talk it through with him, but I ended up sobbing hysterically, and I'm honestly really ashamed of this. And that's when he backtracked and said he didn't mean abusive, he meant domineering, and I got worried that he backtracked because he was scared of me crying. I asked him to go see a psychologist to get external advice on whether our relationship is unhealthy for him. He said no to therapy, but agreed to have a deep talk with his best friend, who knows us both really well. I then asked him if I make him feel small or if he's afraid of me, to which he said no. I also asked him if he gets nauseous when he thinks about coming to see me, or if he changes his activities because he's worried that it will upset me, and to both of those he said no. I have never directly insulted or belittled William. It wouldn't occur to me to do so, but I have said certain things that could definitely be hurtful, and maybe that's making him feel disgusting and small, or even isolated. I would feel disgusted if someone said some of the things that I've said to him, and I don't want him to feel disgusted. I love him, and I'm horrified by the idea that I could be hurting him. I'm even more horrified by the idea that I could be an abuser. We have since talked about it again, and he promised he didn't backtrack out of fear, but out of having not originally originally realized what the word abuse meant to me. I said that I was willing to go to therapy, to work on being the healthiest version of myself, and to trust him to choose for himself whether our relationship was healthy for him or not. I also said I would work on expressing my distress less emotively, and that I was taking it very seriously. So am I abusive in this situation? What should I do? This is a really sticky situation, and I think it's really good to hear that you're going to a psychologist to try and work this out. Because honestly, I think that really is your best bet. There's a lot going on here between you and your boyfriend, and there's a lot of nuance that you definitely need to figure out with a psychologist. So hopefully that goes well. And I think talking to them and discussing these issues, especially with the fact that you've struggled with PTSD of having to deal with an abusive relationship before, definitely is something that a professional should hear about. And hopefully in the end, things can work out between you and your boyfriend, because you two obviously love each other. So I really hope that all of this works out. I moved 500 miles to be with my boyfriend, only to now end up feeling like his mom, and I honestly don't know what to do. I'm a 30-year-old female and my boyfriend is 27. We spent the first half of our relationship long distance, living in different states on the other side of the country. I agreed that if I found a job in my field, I'd move to his state. So now we have been living together for about 2 months. For me, it's a new city, a new state, a new job, it's a new everything. My job is incredibly demanding. I'm the supervisor of an entire department, and I manage 9 employees, with little to no support from upper management. I am mentally and emotionally exhausted by the end of the day. My boyfriend, in contrast, works from home, and I do know that he works hard. However, he'll admit he has a lot of downtime during the day. He also makes more money than me. My issue is that I feel like his mom now that we live together. I do all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping, all of the cooking. When something is broken, I'm the one who calls the apartment maintenance. Basically, I manage our household. Coming home after a long day to a sink full of dishes, or socks on the floor, the toilet seat up, it all just drives me crazy. I have asked for more initiative, and his response is that he just doesn't think about those things, and that I need to ask him. At first, this seemed fair, but now it's like one more thing on my list each day. I shouldn't have to ask him to help keep our home clean. If the toilet is dirty, then scrub it. Or if the dishwasher is full, then empty it. I almost feel like I was disillusioned by the long distance, and now reality is hitting me hard. I know some of my bitterness is unfair, but it's hard when I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to a job that's emotionally and mentally draining, while he's rolling out of bed 5 minutes before a meeting because he played video games until 2 in the morning. Part of me just wants to go back home, but it's been 3 months. I'm just exhausted and missing my family, friends, and my old life. And honestly, at this point, I'm not sure what to do anymore. Your boyfriend is being incredibly lazy. The fact that he says that you need to ask him in order for him to do anything around the house is incredibly unfair, and that's not how this should work. He needs to be an active participant in keeping this house clean. It's ridiculous. This is just not fair for you. And you said it best. You get up at 5 in the morning every day. If anything, the fact that he works from home should mean that he should be the first person to take care of stuff. The sink, the dishes, the toilet, the laundry, all of that. He should be the first one taking care of that. You're busy enough as it is. So in my opinion, it's time to set some very clear boundaries. Tell him straight up that he needs to start doing more around the house, that you are absolutely exhausted by the end of the day, and he needs to contribute more. And it's not like you don't do enough as it is. I'm sure based on what you've described, you're already doing a lot of the chores around the house, but it sounds like he's doing nothing, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. So hopefully this works out between the two of you, because you moved pretty far just to be with this guy, and it really would be a shame if this is the reason that you end up moving back home. My mom got my Karen of a teacher demoted after she spent the entire year bullying me, all because I was bad at math. So this happened back in 2009. I was a sophomore in high school, and this was about a year before my autism diagnosis. So I have a math disability, and it affects my ability to do things with numbers. Ever since the 7th grade, I had been put into a special ed math class, since my math skills were not good enough for the regular classes. Freshman year, we had a really good math teacher, and by sophomore year, we ended up with a new teacher. She was the cheerleading coach at my local high school. Now, I was a good kid in class. I didn't talk when the teacher was talking, I didn't cause any distractions, I was honest, and never used my phone during class. I was the kind of kid that teachers probably really appreciated. Anyway, she was nice to everybody else, but for some reason, she decided that I was the one she was going to pick on. Over the course of 2 semesters, she would yell at me pretty much once every day, called me a liar on several occasions when I was being truthful. She would call her previous this class her dud class. And when I told one of my other teachers about this, by the name of Miss Mary, they tried to get me to work things out with this teacher. But this crazy teacher literally said I was mistaken and called me a liar and manipulated me into saying I was mistaken about her doing anything to me, then just walked out. After that, Miss Mary said to me, "She just manipulated you, didn't she?" And I would say yes, that's exactly what she did. One day when I was in class with this psycho teacher, I had a question about how to do a problem, so I raised my hand and asked how to do it. This teacher said, "That problem is so easy, even a monkey could do it." So my mom had been writing everything I said about this lady down, and at the end of the year, my mom went to the sophomore principal and basically complained to them. It is important to note that the sophomore principal that year was African American. And yes, in my school there was a principal for each grade. So my mom said to him, "I want to talk to you about my kid's special ed teacher." Now my daughter has had a number of special education teachers in her life, and none of her teachers have spoken to her the way this teacher does to her. My mom then started reading what my teacher said to me, stating that this problem is so easy that even a monkey could do it. And once the principal heard this comment that the teacher made, his eyes widened. My mom said, "My daughter will not be having her next year." And the principal said, "You're right. Your daughter will not be having her next year. There's no way that's happening." After that, this psycho teacher was demoted to only assisting in classes. And honestly, considering how she treated me, that's probably for the best. I'm honestly surprised that this lady still has a job. I mean, talking to a student who's already in special education because of some disability that's holding them back is so unbelievably rancid. This lady definitely does not deserve to be a teacher in my opinion. And it's also worth noting, despite whatever stereotypes you want to go with, I honestly don't think I've ever seen a cheerleading coach being shown in a good light personally. Maybe that's just me, but I've read a lot of these stories. And there is that common denominator that they are just not very nice people. And I'm sure that's not the case across the board. It's just unfortunate when the majority really does ruin the bunch. When it comes to the original poster and the way they were treated, this is honestly so disgusting and just unacceptable. I mean, they're literally just trying to figure out how to do math. They have a disability where they just can't figure math out, and it's not their fault. They're not choosing to be bad at math. So the fact that this teacher is just deciding, you know what, I'm gonna pick on you specifically, as well as yelling and embarrassing this person over and over again, in my opinion, proves that this lady needs a career change. Because yes, kids suck, but when there's kids who actually have a need, and instead of meeting those needs, you decide to bully them and belittle them for an entire year, you as the education professional deserve to be fired in my opinion, because that's unacceptable and you really should not treat people like that. Today I messed up by breaking down in an interview because I was worried about my girlfriend's health, and I honestly feel really embarrassed. So the stress began last night when I was at the gym with my girlfriend and she came over to me telling me her left arm was going numb. I then suggested that we leave immediately and figure that out as soon as possible. The numbness spread up her arm till half her body on her left side was numb. Her tongue was numb on one side and her vision started to get zigzaggy in her left eye. We called her mom, who has migraines, and said that they were similar to her symptoms. So we went to my close by apartment to see what we could do to make her feel better. Mind you, it's really late at night at this point. Once we got to my apartment, her numbness was mostly gone, but the headache was beginning. Over the next 3 hours, her pain increased significantly, and it sat like that for over 40 minutes. I could only watch, try to research, get her ice packs and warm towels, and hold her hair while she puked from the pure pain she was feeling. And this was happening the entire evening. It was truly indescribable to watch and feel so powerless. I did my best. My roommate thankfully went and got Excedrin, which she had to try multiple times to get down, but eventually her pain went down to about a 2 out of 10, instead of the 7 out of 10 and higher that she's been experiencing. For the last week, she has been getting faint when standing up and feeling some pressure in her sinuses, which is really concerning. But this morning, she just had a faint headache and lack of appetite after such an ordeal. So after staying up most of the night, I have to go do an online Teams interview with a potential internship for the summer. Most of the questions are going fairly well, and I can answer them proficiently until the math part. The stress just made my mind go blank and I couldn't think. They eventually, after what felt like 5 minutes of silence, just told me the answer and we moved on. Embarrassed, I looked down at my phone on the table and I saw a new message from my girlfriend. She said that she just talked to the doctor and they are having her go to the ER for a brain scan. And I also saw that there were 2 missed calls. So I start to mentally freak out and excuse myself for a minute so I can call her back. She says they think she may have a brain bleed or something serious and needs to get immediate immediate attention. So at this point, I sit back down in front of my camera, visibly red from holding back my crying, and I just can't stop it. I just start falling apart on camera in front of 3 people at the Department of Natural Resources, and I tell them she's in the hospital and might have a brain bleed. They let me off nicely, saying, "You seem like a good guy and certainly know a lot, and we hope everything works out, but you should go be with her." Essentially, they ended the interview with me crying from stress and anxiety. We are at the ER now, and she's chillin'. She feels mostly fine, so they are just doing precautionary stuff at the moment. Hopefully the brain scans will be good, and now we just have to wait and see. Thankfully, I don't think I'll ever have an interview go this poorly ever again. They were pretty good sports about it after all. What a stressful situation to be stuck in. You're in the middle of an interview and your girlfriend has to go to the hospital just to try and get a brain scan to make sure she's okay. That really is scary overall, but at least it worked out. And honestly, I would really try to work at that company. They were really cool about you stepping aside and saying, "Hey, I need to take care of my girlfriend right now. This is really stressed out." They also saw you at a moment where, yeah, this is what makes me break. Not the workload I could get, but my girlfriend being in danger. And if anything, hopefully it does work out for a good job. So hopefully your girlfriend got better and everything's okay. Because in the grand scheme of things, the interview's not that big of a deal. It's honestly so inconsequential. The most important thing there was your girlfriend. And when it counted, you stepped up and were there for her. And that is way more important than anything else that could possibly be going on. An entitled Karen freaks out on a veteran of war in the middle of a supermarket, all because he wouldn't let her stupid kid play with his service dog. And this Karen's entitlement is absolutely baffling. Here's what happened. So this incident occurred yesterday at the grocery store while my partner was shopping. This is actually a challenging task for him. He doesn't like all the aisles and all the people in the stores, and he doesn't like that he feels distracted from paying attention to his surroundings by needing to concentrate on the list of items that he needs. Because he is hard of hearing, he also can't easily hear where people are, and this is hard for him. Also, it's worth noting that he has extra trouble hearing high-pitched sounds, like kids or women's voices. During the COVID lockdown, he lost a lot of progress that he made with his anxiety, but he's working on getting back to where he was. He has a service dog now, which has helped him immensely, not just in public. He sleeps better now, and the dog will alert him when he is becoming anxious based on his behaviors and can help him calm down. It's really incredible. The dog has a vest, and if you read it, you would see that it has a patch that says PTSD service dog, do not distract. Another patch says hard of hearing handler. His dog is trained to guard him from people and to alert him what side he's being approached from. This is not aggressive. The dog just uses its body to block him off and touches his leg while doing it so he knows someone is there. So he turns and saw this little kid looking up at him. He just told her the dog is working and she cannot pet him on the assumption that she had just asked him that. In response, the kid just holds out her hand for the dog to sniff and said, "Mommy says I can if I say hello first," or something along those lines. The dog doesn't react much at all, so the kid just starts hugging him. At this point, my partner stepped abruptly away from her and told her she needs to stop and to go find her parent. Now, he couldn't tell if the kid was old enough to read, but he's not really mad at the kid because a parent should be responsible for her in a store. And while I'm sure he was probably very stern with her, since he's not very great with people, especially kids, even on a good day, he's also not someone who yells. Yet, lo and behold, the child's mother appears and is apparently telling him off to not yell at a little girl, and that apparently he made her cry, as well as a bunch of other garbage. He is only catching about 30% of what she is saying. He told her he has a service dog, and she needs to keep a better handle on her kid, literally pointing and saying, "Just read the vest." The lady then rolls her eyes at him and continued to berate him. The entire time, he was just standing there largely ignoring her, thinking that if she just says whatever she wants to say, she'll go and leave him alone. But then this entitled Karen did something absolutely unexpected and so unbelievably rude. We are still baffled that she actually did this. She brings up her hand and snaps in my partner's face and asked him, "Are you stupid or something?" Thankfully, there was a couple shopping who must have overheard all that was going on. The woman from this couple came and moved that woman out of my partner's face and looked like she was chewing her out until the Karen left the aisle. The man from the couple asked my partner if he was all right, and he turned out to be a veteran too. And after this experience, I'm honestly still so livid about it, and we really hope that something like this doesn't happen again. What a horrible entitled Karen. Not only are you neglectful of your child, you also encourage your kid to go up to a strange dog dog that you don't even know. Like literally that dog could have bit that kid and something really terrible could have happened. But instead you just let it happen. I mean, how awful are you? And that doesn't even address the giant elephant in the room, and that's how this entitled Karen treated this veteran. I mean, this is so unbelievably gross. She snapped her hand in this guy's face, screaming at him because he's trying to get her stupid kid away from his dog. I mean, all around just absolutely disgusting. Thankfully, there were some good Samaritans right around the corner, ready to mitigate the situation. It's also really unfortunate because I've read many stories at this point of people just disrespecting service dogs, as well as the people who have them. It's honestly just so disturbing to me. Like, why can't you just leave these people alone? They're just trying to live their lives like anybody else. And leave the dog alone. That dog is working. Leave it alone. When will these people learn? Like, it's so infuriating. So hopefully, for the sake of the original poster, they never have to deal with anything like this ever again, because the way they got treated was completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My boyfriend wants me to move across the country with him, and now my mom is freaking out and everyone is mad at me, and now I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together and serious for about 1 year. My family was apprehensive about me dating him at first, but they were eventually fine with it and seemed to like him, or just didn't tell me they didn't like him. I moved out of my parents' house a couple of weeks ago, and I officially moved in with my boyfriend. I know my mother wasn't big on me moving out, but didn't say much to me. He got a job offer across the country. He is a professor, but he was never my professor, if that makes sense. We haven't definitively decided on anything yet. He hasn't decided to take the job, but is probably going to, and wants me to come with him. And honestly, we are both leaning towards doing it. It is about a 24-hour car ride, and closer to some of his family. I talked to my brother and sister about it casually, but neither of them had much of an opinion about it. I'm not sure who told my mom. They both deny it, but she called me crying yesterday when she found out the news. She told me it would end badly, and told me not to go, and that I should actually break up with him. She said a bunch of terrible things about him. I tried to get her to calm down and ask what she was talking about. She told me this was a bad idea and a bad relationship. She told me if I do move, then I can't move back in with her, which is honestly fine. This phone call upset me, and I just told her I would talk to her later. I told my boyfriend about this, and he got really upset. He, like me, think family being on the fence about relationships in the beginning was pretty understandable, but I think by this point, he has definitely proven himself to an extent. My boyfriend's attitude now is basically saying, screw my family. He is getting upset with me for being passive aggressive, for talking and texting anyone in my family, even though it is really just my mom that's texting me. I don't really understand what the big deal is either. If it does end badly, I can always come back. I don't understand what they are so worried about. He loves me a lot. I'm not angry at my mother. I just don't like the situation. I want to be understanding with my family, but at the same time, my boyfriend is my priority. I don't know what the right amount of sticking up for my boyfriend would look like without disowning my family. My brother and sister's advice is that I should just do it, and that she will eventually just get over it. My dad fully supports my mom and agrees with her. Now at this point, everybody's upset with me, and I don't know what the right thing is to do in this situation. What should I do? In my opinion, there are a few red flags here that I just spotted. For one, your boyfriend's getting upset about you texting your family, and he's basically saying, oh, well, screw your family. Also, another red flag here, the boyfriend in this story is 31 years old, and the girlfriend is 22 years old. That is a big age difference in my opinion, and it seems like that's probably what your parents are worried about. Not only are you dating somebody significantly older than you, but you're also about to move across the country with them. And sure, you said it best. You do love your boyfriend, and you really do appreciate him, and your priority is him, which is great. That's exactly how it should be. But exercising some caution and really weighing your options would not be a bad idea in this situation. At the end of the day, it's up to you what you want to do, and not your mom, your dad, or anybody else in your family is going to make that decision for you. And on that note, it's really terrible that your mom would basically give you an ultimatum. She's basically saying if you move out there, you can never come back, which is not fair for you in the slightest. You would think that if things went belly up, she would at least be there for you and say, of course you can come back. So if you do decide to go, just know that this probably will create some kind of rift between you and your family. And I think either way, you just need to be ready for that. My boyfriend has been secretly spending $10,000 on a video game on his phone, and I'm blown away and I don't know what to do. So I've been with my boyfriend for nearly 9 months now, and just last week, I found a bunch of scandalous anime apps, if you know what I mean, on his phone while he was scrolling. I asked him about this, and he immediately attempted to delete the apps. But I stopped him and asked him to explain to me what they were. He said that they were games and he spent money on them. I asked him how much money exactly, and he told me about $3,000. I then wanted to see his payment history on his Gmail account, and there I saw he had actually spent well over $12,000 over the course of 3 years, most of which was spent this year while he was with me. Last month alone, he nearly spent $700, and he only earns about $2,500 a month. Plus, he pays rent, which is about $800 a month. He admitted that in these games, he was married to a virtual anime character, and he dressed them in very scandalous clothing. Look, I've never understood the whole anime thing. It's not really my thing. But what upsets me in this situation is the financial side of things. I cannot understand for the life of me why anyone would spend this much on games, especially virtual clothes for cartoon characters. He can't even save for a loan on a car or a house that he keeps saying he wants in the near future. I sat him down with his mother and we talked about this in great detail. Apparently his mother had confronted him about his spending problem a year ago, and this was well before we even met. So this is proof that he hasn't changed at all. He admitted to having a spending problem and will be seeking help, a psychologist of some kind, just to try and understand why he's doing this and how to stop. This has made me second guess our relationship and his ability to save for things in the future. I know we've only been together for a short time, but it's things like this that can ruin something really great. Aside from his spending problem, he is genuinely a fantastic guy who treats me wonderfully. Is it worth the effort at this point? If his mother already had this problem with him before we met, and we are having this same issue now, is he actually ever going to change? Should I stay if he improves? Or is he a lost cause at this point? What should I do? This definitely sounds like it's some kind of addiction. I mean, the way he's just spending money so willingly, well over $10,000 at this point, on a video game at that, on his phone of all things, is really disturbing to me. So I think your concerns are completely justified. But it really begs the question, what kind of partner are you looking for? Because I think what you're identifying right now is something you really do want to know early on. Can he even save money? Does he have the ability to put money aside for the things that matter the most? And it sounds like right now he really doesn't. And he's had this problem since before you guys have been together. This really would have been something that you would have liked to know probably well before you started dating. But at least there's some kind of silver lining here. It sounds like he really does want to change. And hopefully with some help, he can learn how to manage his money better and be a better boyfriend overall. Because that's a lot of money to spend on a video game when he could have been using that money to further his life and his career. An entitled driver and his friends zigzag all over the road and repeatedly honk the horn at me and my mom. And after we honk the horn telling them to get out of the way, they accidentally drive into traffic and get in an accident. And at this point, we're not sure if we're to blame for their accident. So I had just finished my 8-hour shift and I had just wanted to go home and de-stress. But my mom had to go to our uncle's house to pick up some stuff for our grandma and had texted our mom to come and pick it up from his house. So we're on our way to their house and these guys in a smaller car are actively zigzagging all across the road, right behind us and repeatedly honking the horn at us. They even came close enough to try and rear-end us. And this is something that happened to my mom when she was pregnant with our youngest brother. Eventually, they pulled up right next to us and I turn and give them a glare. The driver was a middle-aged man and the other two was maybe 2 college-age students, from what I recall. They laughed at us before speeding in front of us and then proceed to brake check us several times. My mom clearly was not impressed by this and slows down to prevent them from hitting us. But they just kept at it. And by this point, we were just a few blocks away from my uncle's house. These idiots stopped at the light just before the turnoff, and I just sat there. And even after the light had turned green, I remember seeing the college guys looking back at us still laughing. I was about to flip them the bird because one of them did flip us off while yelling all kinds of Asian slurs at us out the window. So our mom honks her horn at them, and then the driver, I guess startled but not paying attention to the traffic light, hits the gas before quickly taking the turn off. And this was just as the light had switched to red, and unfortunately they didn't see the other car already coming in their direction. Suddenly their bumper as well as the left rear light got clipped by another car, and they spun out a bit before coming to a stop after climbing the curb of the sidewalk, and the other car's front light headlight was busted. My mom and I were just sitting there shocked by what we were witnessing. Then I see some bystanders that were hanging out at the park nearby. They come jogging over to check on the idiots, who were just as shocked as we were. Then I saw a car pull up next to us and turn to check on those idiots. I didn't realize until my mom pointed out that it
was the car that clipped the idiot's car. The bystanders helped these idiots out of their damaged car and onto the sidewalk. My mom didn't wait and just left to get to our uncle's house. Once she reached the turnoff, one of the drivers screamed at my mom, "Hey, why did you honk at me?" My mom just repeatedly kept saying out loud it was their fault for not paying attention to the road, and they kept messing with us. I had every right to honk at them, especially when the light was green and they were just sitting there blocking the road. We ended up staying at our uncle's house for a while to let things blow over a bit, so I hope they learned their lesson of not messing with people on the road, especially one where it's in a neighborhood full of kids. Luckily, there weren't any kids playing outside that day. But what do you guys think? Were we in the wrong for leaving when they got in an accident? Honestly, it was fully their fault, and karma happened to strike them right then and there. You are not at fault in this situation, and you are definitely not the jerk. I can't stand when people act like this on the road. They swerve all over the place, they're up in your face and all over your car, honking the horn and being absolutely obnoxious. Not to mention blocking traffic and brake checking you at every glance. That's honestly insane to me, and it's just so inappropriate. So good for you for honking your horn. I would have done the same thing. It's not your fault they weren't paying attention. That's completely on them. So hopefully they did learn their lesson. That you know what? If you're gonna drive, you need to take it seriously and you need to be safe. Especially in an area where there's a lot of kids. I mean, what were they thinking? Such bad drivers, and hopefully some consequences come their way. My fiance became incredibly religious overnight, and honestly, it's making me very uncomfortable. To start off, I have not yet told him that I find his new deeply intense passion for God and religion to be uncomfortable for me. And I know I need to, but I need advice on how to bring it up and what to say to him. My fiance and I have been together for a little over 3 years now, yet we've known each other since we were both teenagers. He is undeniably my best friend and the sweetest guy to probably ever exist. With him being in the Navy, we've had to deal with a lot of obstacles due to distance, and he is currently serving an 8-month-long period of deployment. He proposed to me back in July, right before he deployed. Ever since I've known him, I've known that he's Christian and that he believes in God. I, on the other hand, believe in God, yet I'm not a very religious person, nor do I believe in a lot of the values that the Bible preaches. I believe that there is a higher power, yet I'm not interested in worshiping, serving, and allowing myself and my choices to be controlled by this higher power. The way I see it, it's my life and I'm my own person, so I should just make my own decisions and choices based on what I think is best for myself and others. That being said, my fiance was the same way, up until about a year ago, that is. He has become very devout, and that has never made me uncomfortable until he suggested that we have his old pastor officiate our wedding in July. My fiance got into contact with this pastor and asked him to officiate our wedding, and the pastor agreed to officiate only if we grow together with Jesus through emails with all three of us and have a Bible study. I wasn't too keen on the idea because I'm not very religious, but I figured perhaps this will be beneficial for our relationship, and it's what my fiance really wanted, so I just went along with it. Well, this pastor began emailing us last week, and I was under the impression that we'd be dealing with growing our relationship together, yet the pastor asked us questions like, "What are you looking for from me? Do you have any spiritual questions I can answer? Tell me more about your spiritual journey," and so forth, which is fine. I don't mind answering these questions. However, the second email we got from this pastor really bothered me. He wrote my fiance and said, "You mentioned in your email, you and your fiance are going to be moving in together once you return from deployment." He then goes on to thanking him for letting him know. He then basically implies that any kind of intimate relationships are designed for husband and wife, and that any relations outside of marriage is not part of his plan and would categorize as a sin. He then goes into some really weird detail about that aspect of our lives in a way that really was uncomfortable, and reading that really just made me nauseous. My fiance and I have been intimate ever since we began dating, not only physically but also emotionally connected, so I found it very strange for him to be asking such specific questions about our relationship, if you know what I mean. I immediately messaged my fiance under the impression that he would feel the same as I do, not interested in anything he's saying, and telling him that this is really not his business. However, he messaged me back with a much different response and basically said that he wouldn't be opposed to the idea of waiting until we're married, if you know what I mean. And that just completely and utterly left me in shock. When did he become so religious like this? Now, I've got to preface this by saying it's not the waiting that bothers me the most. It's the fact that all of a sudden, my fiance is letting his own choices and decisions be influenced greatly by religion. I do not want to be one of those couples, and I'm really not trying to offend anybody. This is just my own personal opinion. I was so shocked I had to respond by saying, "Are you you serious?
And he had reassured me that he's not saying yes to the idea, but he's also not saying no to the idea either. I straight up told him I wasn't interested in that kind of relationship. He replied to that with telling me that I should email the pastor my opinion about it. And I know that would just bother me worse. My fiance ended the conversation with the answer that he's still on the fence about it and that he'll email the pastor back with questions, basically talking about that really private subject matter. I do not want to be with someone who's so religious to the point where they make their decisions based on what the Bible preaches to them as well as what other people are telling them. I do not want to be in a marriage where I have to be worried that suddenly he's going to whip out the Bible and start sharing some weird scripture with me. That is not the marriage I want. I do not want a marriage based in strict religion and Bible preaching. I do not want a marriage where he's always looking over my shoulder, saying something along the lines of, oh, God wouldn't want that. It's my body, it's my mind, it's my life, and it's my decisions. And again, I apologize if I offended anyone with the way I see religion. This is honestly just my perspective, but I really am not sure what to do. This is a tricky situation. For one, I think the pastor's being way too intrusive about your personal life. There's a lot of details here that I left out, but needless to say, it was incredibly personal, and it's not something that I think anybody should really be asking about. And I think it's really backwards that your fiance is more inclined to run things by his pastor first before listening to his future wife. So I don't blame you for being bothered by this. And it honestly could be about anything, you said it best, but it's the fact that an outside influence is basically making the decisions instead of your husband and yourself. So hopefully you can have this talk with him and maybe find somebody else to officiate your wedding, because this pastor just sounds really creepy, and if I was in your shoes, I definitely would not want him to officiate mine, especially if he's going to be making those kind of weird comments in the email. An entitled man sells me his car that is absolutely working fine for $500, claiming that it was beyond repair and that there's no way I could ever fix it. But now he's demanding $10,000 after he watches me fix it right there on the spot and drive it off of his lot. And I honestly could not be more satisfied with proving this guy wrong. Here's what happened. So back in 2008, I was 21 years old. Craigslist, of all places, was still the website for everything. From cars to hookups, there was pretty much nothing you couldn't find. The RX-8 hit the market in 2003, and I fell in love with the way they looked immediately. However, they were stickered around $35,000 for the base model, and I was a 16-year-old kid from a lower-class family at the time. I spent years in high school delivering pizza and helping out with my uncle on the weekends at the shop that he worked at. I did anything I could to get a few more dollars for my super cool race car. At the time, I had bought a second-gen Eclipse GSX and truly had no idea just how cool this car was. Every night, I would lay in bed before sleep and look at cars listed on Craigslist for sale. My girlfriend of the time often complained, which is pretty normal for a gearhead like myself at that age. Fast forward to 2008, and I was an ASE certified mechanic and had been driving a tow truck for a little over 3 years. One night, while lying in bed with my then girlfriend, I came across an ad for a 2004 RX-8 Shinka, black on a set of chrome aftermarket but knockoff wheels. It looked great. However, the ad explained that it had a blown motor and would need to be replaced and was not covered by warranty. Having been in love with these cars and the older models of the RX-7 and Cosmo, I knew a lot about them. You see, Mazda's RX line have special engines in them. They are rotary motors instead of pistons, like a 4-cylinder or a V8. I also happen to be a certified rotary tech. I contacted the seller and I asked why he thought the motor was blown out, and he responded with something like,
I'm a mechanic and I own a shop. We've had the car for a few months and we cannot get it running. These dang rotaries are weird and they're known to blow out. It's blown out and I know it is.
I then asked him if I could come meet him in the morning and look the car over, and he agreed to do that. So fast forward and I'm at his shop, and I actually had a proposition for him. I said, hey man, if I'm able to fix it for you, would you be willing to make some kind of deal with me? I'm pretty sure I could do it. And before I could go any further, this guy cut me off and he said,
no, it has a blown motor. Either give me $500 or I'm not selling it.
I tried to continue and I tried to explain that I might be able to fix it, but he said,
I don't care what you can do. I only care if you could give me $500.
Realizing I'm going nowhere, I decide to ask him if it'll even start in the first place. He goes on to say,
it will start and run for about a minute, but then it shuts off again. Or if you try to move it, it just doesn't work and it won't start for hours afterwards.
So at that point, I said, okay, I'm gonna look it over. Here's $500. I looked the car over, did a compression test on the motor, which came back good. I then proceeded to do the Mazda's built-in system to recycle the motor, which pushes all excess fluids out of the motor when flooded. This took little more than pumping the brakes just about 25 times, while an accessory after turning the key on and off. I let the car run for about 45 seconds and shut it off, already having the key and the title. I explained that I'd be back that night to pick it up and asked what time he closed, as his lot was gated. This entitled mechanic told me that he'd be around until about 6:30, and I agreed to be there by 6 o'clock. After that, we parted ways for the day. While I was at work, I called up my brother-in-law, who's also a mechanic, and explained everything, and I asked him to give me a ride down to the shop, as it would honestly be much cheaper to pay for his gas than to pay for the diesel to run a tow truck down there after work. We hopped into his Mustang at around 4:50 and headed out. We parked right in front of this guy's shop, and I walked in to tell him that I was here to take the car, and I thanked him for the sale. This guy then said,
When is your tow truck gonna be here? I don't have all night, kid. You're gonna have to push it out on the street if they take too long.
I looked at him and I said, oh, no need for a tow truck. I brought a transport tag from my work. I tried to tell you that I'm a mechanic who also specializes in these cars specifically. There's honestly nothing wrong with it. My brother is bolting a transport tag on it right now. But this guy did not believe me. He just kept saying,
that motor is broken. No, you're lying. Get it off my lot now.
So I just looked at him and said, have a nice day, and thanks again for the car. I walked out and I hopped into the RX-8. I started it and I followed my brother-in-law out of the lot. Looking in my rearview mirror, I could see this entitled man standing in his parking lot, literally stomping on his hat. He had spiked it like a football onto the pavement. And when I got home, I checked my email, and I had one from this man demanding another $10K for the car, as he didn't know that it ran. I then said the following to him in an email. Sir, I attempted to tell you twice that I was a certified rotary tech, and even offered to look the car over before buying it. You refused to even hear me out, let alone acknowledge what I was saying. I understand that you are angry, but I don't care what you are. I gave you $500 as agreed. Have a nice night. This man emailed me another 30 plus times after this, and I never responded. And honestly, considering the way he was acting when I first met him, I hope his attitude has changed, and he learns to fix a car before he gives it away for $500. How entitled can you possibly be? I mean, if this guy was just a little bit more patient and actually listened to this guy, he probably wouldn't have let thousands of dollars right off his lot. It's also incredibly comical that this guy messaged him 30 times and also demanded about $10,000 more for a car that he already sold off. I mean, in my opinion, it's not the original poster's fault that this guy did not know what he was doing. Like, literally, this is on this cocky mechanic that didn't want to hear what this guy was saying. If he was just a little more patient and shut his mouth, he probably could have worked out some kind of deal, and they both could have gotten away with a lot more money. So good for the original poster for knowing what they're talking about and taking the deal that this guy was demanding. Because sometimes entitled people like this need to learn the hard way, and it sounds like this guy definitely got the message. My coworker harasses me at work for being trans, and I have had just about enough of this, and I don't know what to do. For a bit of background, I've been working at McDonald's for 6 months now as a drive-through cashier. I am 19 years old, I'm trans masculine, and I'm very neurodivergent. Until this last Friday, literally nobody cared, since it was never relevant, and at the end of the day, I'd been doing my job well. So why should my private life matter, right? Well, allow me to introduce Kyle. This is not their real name. Kyle, as of the time of posting this story, has only been working at my workplace for 1 week. Last week, when he started, I happened to be sick. Due to this fact, the first place he was trained was at my regular position, so he could be back up when I was gone. This week, when I returned, I naturally was put in my normal spot. Now, something to keep in mind is that the spot that I work at in the building is the least physically intensive thing you could do at this restaurant. In contrast, it is the most mentally demanding spot in the building, as it's one where you really have to be at the top of your game. You have to take orders for drive-through customers on one of the lanes, as well as accept payments for all customers that come through, making sure not to incorrectly have them pay for someone else's food, and to make sure customers' orders are correct in general. Oftentimes, you would be doing two things at once. Otherwise, the customer's wait time would skyrocket. Over the past 3 days, here's what he has done in chronological order that I have personally witnessed. To start things off, he hit on a girl coworker while standing uncomfortably close to her, only for her to look back at me in a visibly uncomfortable manner, as we both laugh in the kind of way where we both know that we're silently saying, please get this guy away from us. And this interaction was literally the first time I'd ever met him. He also told our manager to his face that he has an attitude problem after being told to get off his phone and put his headset head back on to help the customer he kept waiting for 5 minutes because apparently his friend came through the drive-thru and wanted to call them while he was working, and he was dumb enough to answer his phone. He also had some serious issues with trying to figure out the menu. For example, he asked me if a certain item was still on the menu in the first place, so I asked him if he was even able to select the item in the first place. He responded by saying, well, no, and so I say to him, okay, well that means that we don't have any. But of course, he decides to go against everything I have to say because he says, I don't think so, just ask the general manager. And I was really confused by this because what does a manager have to do with any of this? I say to him again, if you can't select the item and the icon says that it's unavailable, it means we don't have any. You can't sell an item we don't have to the customer. You don't need to ask the manager for that either. After half a second of silence, the only thing Kyle responds back with is by saying to me that apparently I'm annoying, and then he proceeded to ignore me for the rest of the day. He also asked me to get a box of barbecue sauce packets, and I obliged, regretfully so. After I brought a newly opened box of sauce, he demanded, not asked mind you, that I fill the sauce containers for him, and when he barked that order at me, I told him no. I had to take orders from the cars that were waiting in line. He then demanded a second time to fill the sauces, this time much more forcibly. I just snickered at him and said no again, and went to take the orders back at my spot. While I was walking away, he called me slow. Then he later called me lazy, which is whatever. Some days later, it is time for me to go on break. As he was my backup, he was to take over while I go eat something. As I'm inputting my start break time into the system, he turns to me and says, so what makes you think you're a man? I stopped in my tracks and I stared at him. After I took a moment to process what he said, I see him looking condescendingly at me, expecting a response. I say to him, I just am. I look flatly at him, already done with his garbage. He then says, what about your hair then? For some context, I've been growing my hair out since the 6th grade. I literally have the longest hair of anyone I know, and I'm absolutely not gonna cut it off just to please some jerk's need for gender norms to be upheld in his worldview. I reply by saying, you know I'm not the only guy here with long hair, right? And this is the truth. We share a cis male coworker who also has hair longer than some of the girls. The only difference between us is that I have terrible beard genetics, so I don't have one while he does. And this pretty much ended the conversation that we had, as I just left after saying that I have to go eat my food. By the time I got back, his shift had ended, so I told my manager what he said to me. My manager, who was also pretty much fed up with Kyle, told me that I should have told him right away so Kyle could be reprimanded harshly and swiftly. This last incident involved him seeing me walking out of the bathroom. He took that as an opportunity to openly complain to anyone who was within earshot that he was uncomfortable, that he had to share a restroom with a mentally ill girl, and that she shouldn't be allowed to work here because she has problems and isn't fit to work. Yes, he made absolutely sure to emphasize that I'm a she at any chance that he got. When not one but 2 managers on the shift told him he was behaving violently and out of line, he had the audacity to say again, well, they have an attitude problem. He hates me and treats me awfully, so it's not my fault I'm upset. As if him being told to do his job is somehow on the same level as him being rampantly bigoted towards me. Because of this, he was told to apologize to me or go home, but he refused to apologize, so he was told to leave. Even further, rather than being concerned about apologizing to me, he was more interested if he could still get a free meal out of the restaurant, which by the way was a resounding no. Now, as far as I know, I've taken on the worst of his behavior consecutively, but by no means is my side all of it. Other coworkers have also experienced some semblance of discrimination, as well as general discomfort, harassment, and this weird holier-than-thou attitude that he has towards pretty much everybody. The only reason I'm his main target is because I seemingly took his favorite spot at work, where he could easily be on his phone. And honestly, I just can't stand this guy. How on earth does Kyle still have a job? Not only is he being hostile towards other people at the restaurant, but he's also being incredibly bigoted towards the original poster. Like, this is unacceptable in my opinion. To literally go out of your way to make a scene like this when someone's coming out of the bathroom just to go back to work is so inappropriate for a work setting, it's not even funny. Like, if they genuinely had a problem with that, they could go to their manager and discuss it there. But to purposefully make a scene just to try and embarrass this person is probably the definition of workplace harassment. So if anything, I mean, shame on these managers for not firing this guy sooner. It just baffles me that they would only send him home after so many situations that prove that he's just a danger to his coworkers. So what you could
could do is probably go above your managers and call up corporate. I mean, this guy is not a good human being, and he really should not be in the same workplace if this is how aggressive he's going to be towards his coworkers. It feels like a very unsafe work environment, and honestly, I hope things work out for you for the best. My husband can't seem to understand why I'm upset about having to sleep in the car while we're staying with a friend, and I honestly don't know what to do. We ended up leaving a very toxic living situation. We were roommates with another couple, but ended up having to leave in a hurry. We are currently staying with another friend, but the problem at hand is that my husband is the only one allowed in the apartment. Apparently, the place is too small for the both of us to be in there at the same time. So basically, I've been in the car almost 24 hours a day for the last few days. I'm also disabled and I can't really walk very well. I told him tonight that I wanted to go to the hospital to check myself into getting back on some meds because I'm supposed to be taking them for anxiety. He's working a lot and he works a regular job and he also does DoorDash. He can't understand why I think it's bizarre that I'm not allowed in the apartment despite his friends knowing that we are married. It just doesn't sit right with me, and I told him I'm tired of sitting in the car almost 24 hours a day. I haven't had a shower since Friday and it's Monday night. I'm being forced to use the bathroom in a container because I cannot drive the car due to my disability. That's how weird and awkward things have finally gotten. It's honestly making me want to take a break from our relationship. I understand that he's worried about me going into the hospital. However, I'm trying to make him understand that this is something I need to do. I'm tired of basically having zero human contact, except for basically only him. I'm not really sure what to do here, but I'm starting to grow resentful and anxious. I think I'm getting depressed as well. I just can't seem to get him to understand how I'm feeling, and I honestly don't know what to do. This is unbelievably sketchy. The fact that your husband is acting like this and not choosing to be at your side and maybe, I don't know, getting a hotel or something is really, really bizarre. I mean, he knows that you have a disability and you can't walk correctly, right? I mean, it's not like this has slipped through the cracks or anything like that. I mean, how could he honestly still stay at this apartment if you are not allowed inside of it? And I guarantee you it's not that small. There's no reason you couldn't stay in that apartment and actually have a roof over your head instead of being forced to live in the car basically. And to top it all off, you are being forced to go to the bathroom in bottles in the car, all because his friends aren't going to let you inside to use the bathroom. I mean, this is actually really, really scary because this screams that something nefarious is clearly going on that his friends don't want you to know about. And worst of all, there's a good chance that he probably knows exactly what's going on. He is the one that's allowed to go inside the apartment after all. The original poster went on to say that apparently the friends don't want her in there because they don't know her that well, which is honestly just really weird and not a good enough excuse in my opinion to not allow someone to even go in there just to take a shower. I mean, these two are married. It's not like she's a complete stranger, so I'm really sorry that you're dealing with this, and hopefully you can find some other kind of living situation because what you're going through is absolutely unacceptable, and there's no reason for you to be locked out of this apartment and be forced to basically live in this car while he's allowed to come and go as he pleases. An entitled Karen takes a man to court and forces him to make child support payments for her child, despite the fact that he is not this kid's father. But as a result, he took this back to court, and the former judge has been fired, and this lady lost her court case. So now she's being forced to pay back 3 years of child support payments, totaling to just over $23,000. Here's what happened. So my husband has a friend that has been ordered by the court to pay child support for a child that is not his, even though this child has a father that is involved and also pays child support. The mother has been double dipping because a judge decided to ignore the law and decided that this friend should be paying child support payments because the child was accustomed to a higher standard of living because of this friend's financial contributions to this household prior to the mother deciding to break things off and move out. Yes, it's as crazy as it sounds. The friend continued to help her financially because he still had feelings, and she was leading him on that they could maybe work things out. But when he finally came to his senses and realized that she was leading him on, he started dating his current girlfriend and stopped his financial aid. And when this happened, she absolutely lost her mind and ended up filing for child support payments. And the judge actually agreed that it was in the best interest of the child to grant her petition. This judge has since been removed from her post as a judge and is working as an advising lawyer in her family firm, which also now has a bad reputation due to her. After taking this all to court, the friend technically won, and the mother is ordered to repay him for 3 years of child support
support payments. He paid $150 a week for just a little over 3 years, but now she has to repay him at a whopping amount of $25 a week via wage garnishment because she made it abundantly clear in the court that she will not willingly pay him back. She will be paying this back for years due to interest and the yearly court fees. His attorney has advised him to wait 1 year and then they can file for an amendment to put liens on any property that she owns and possibly against any tax refunds she might get. But despite all this, he doesn't really feel like he won, considering how long it will take her to pay him back and the fact that he will probably be chasing her for years just to get his money. This story absolutely blows my mind because I honestly cannot believe that this judge legitimately went through with this and made this man make child support payments for a kid that is not even his. But even crazier, he's not the only one making child support payments. Like literally, there's already a father involved who's making payments and is involved in this kid's life. Like this judge is out of their mind for making this guy do this. It's just crazy because that's honestly so unbelievably corrupt. So it's great to hear that this lady got kicked out of being a judge because this is unbelievably unfair. So hopefully this guy's able to get his money back in full from this lady after paying child support for 3 years. And just in case you're wondering, I did the math, and if this guy's paying $150 a week for 3 years, that literally totals to $23,000. And that's a lot of money to pay to a kid that isn't even yours. I mean, how backwards can you possibly get? So in the end, hopefully it all works out, because under no circumstances did he ever deserve to be treated like this. My entitled stepmother demands to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day, despite the fact that I've never been close to her growing up, and she actively tried to replace my mom after my real mother passed away when I was 9 years old. And now, after I told her no, both my dad and my stepmother are refusing to show up to my wedding unless she can walk me down the aisle. Here's what happened. So my mom passed away when I was just 9 years old, and my stepmom by the name of Sarah married my dad when I was 11. I guess she hoped that we would one day be super close, and I would call her mom, but it's never happened. Sarah has always seemed fairly pushy. She would try to do things with me that I used to do with my mom, and it always ended poorly. Sarah would try to get me to not visit my mom's family because she thought it was taking away from family time. I understand Sarah wants to be close, but she kept on trying to replace my mom and it never worked. Me and Sarah aren't close at all today. When I turned 18, I moved in with my girlfriend, who is now my fiancé. I don't really call or stop by the house to see my dad and Sarah. In fact, Sarah was the last person I told I got engaged. Recently, she posted on social media that her boy was going to get married and how excited she was to be the mother of the groom and walk her son down the aisle. My dad wouldn't be able to do it because my dad is disabled. When I asked her about the post, she said that she thought she would be walking me down the aisle because my fiancé was going to be walking as well. I told her that I was going to be walking with my fiancé. She said that this was fine, but she was also really excited for the mother-son dance. I told her as well that there wasn't going to be one. She asked me why, and I straight up told her that the mother of the groom isn't going to be a role at the wedding since my mother is no longer living. This then caused her to break down crying, and she asked me why I hated her. I told her that I didn't hate her, but she kept accusing me of it because apparently to her, I've always treated her like garbage when all she's ever wanted to be was a mother figure in my life. At this point, I got angry and said that she could never be my mom. And you know what? I kind of feel bad about saying that. She then offered to pay for the wedding if that was the issue, but I still said no. Now she and my dad are upset and are currently saying that they won't be attending the wedding unless Sarah walks me down the aisle. My dad told me that Sarah stepped up to be a mom when mine was gone, and she's been a great mom and brought so much love to my life, yet I always rejected her. Can anyone give me any advice on what to do? Because I honestly feel very stuck. There is definitely two sides of this coin in my opinion. On one hand, I think it was very presumptuous of Sarah to assume that she would be walking you down the aisle. I mean, if the past lifetime for you didn't clue her in that you and her were really not that close to begin with, then I don't know what will. So she is completely out of line for assuming even in the slightest that she would be involved in that way. That's just incredibly rude. But on that same note, it really does not sound like you've ever given this lady a chance. Like it sounds like she really just tried her best to try and be kind and loving towards you. And maybe later down the line you can try and see that, but it honestly seems like you're being very insensitive
sensitive towards Sarah. But in that same context, the fact that they're saying, oh, we're not going to show up to your wedding unless Sarah can walk you down the aisle is absolutely ridiculous. That is honestly the most entitled thing out of all of this. So I think considering all that's going on, I think you're definitely in the right here. Sure, both of you probably could have been a lot better growing up. It sounds like she definitely could have been a much better stepmother, and she could have done a better job of respecting your boundaries and understanding that she will never be your mother, and you also probably could have been kinder to her and given her some kind of chance in the past. But with the way they're acting right now, I don't blame you for approaching her and saying, hey, you're not walking me down the aisle. Obviously, in the context of this story, I'm sure there is a lifetime of examples you could share that would say, nope, she's really at fault here. And I totally believe you on that end. But I think with whatever you decide to do for your wedding, just make sure it's what you want to do. And if it means your dad and your stepmom aren't going to show up, then honestly, that's probably for the best, because they really do sound like they're very entitled. And that's not fair for you in the slightest, especially on your wedding day. My entitled parents never believe me when I tell them that my little brother is abusing me and being so terrible to me when they are not in the room. And despite all the mounting evidence, they still won't believe me no matter what. And I've honestly just had enough. So for some context, my little brother is an absolute nightmare. He has always been very unkind to me, and it's always been the case where my parents side with him a lot quicker than they'll ever side with me. So to start out, this particular situation started last week, and I had no idea my little brother was trying to continue this torment until earlier tonight. I'll start with what happened then. A few nights ago, I was enjoying dinner with my family before my brother swung his leg into me and kicked me in the leg. My parents didn't even react and expected me to just deal with it and move on. A few days later, I had just finished vacuuming the house. I sat down on my bed and relaxed, but was then disrupted by the sound of a vacuum again. I walked outside and I saw my brother vacuuming the places I checked thoroughly. I told him we didn't need to vacuum there, and as soon as I walked near him, he dropped the vacuum and he punched me. According to my parents, though, that was my fault, and I was supposed to just move on. Yesterday, I came home from work after a long and tiring day, and my parents needed to go out for the night. I had no idea about this, and they sprung it on me out of nowhere. They expected me to know, and were rather irritated that I didn't, even though they didn't explain anything. They ordered me to make dinner immediately. Luckily, there was some leftovers in the fridge that I could heat up. I went to the kitchen and I began heating up the leftover chicken. Once it had been heated up, I split up the container into two parts using a fork. I filled one bowl for me and another bowl for my little brother. I kept the remaining chicken in the container for somebody else if they wanted to eat it for lunch or dinner. My little brother then walked into the kitchen and snatched the container and the fork away from me and dumped the rest into his bowl. I kindly asked him to give the fork back and told him that I was saving the rest of the chicken for someone else that might be hungry, but as I should have known, that was met by yells and verbal assault. I quickly apologized for making dinner for him, and then he started yelling horrible things at me. In his words, or what I can remember at least, he said to me,
"You're the worst big brother. You failed at being a brother, and you're just so overprotective. I hate you, and I'm sorry that mom and dad have to deal with you."
These words deeply hurt me, and I decided to retreat to another room for some alone time. As I sat there, I could still hear him yelling obscenities at me, and at this point, I started crying. I then noticed a dusting brush that had been broken in half and threw it into the ground in sheer anger. I know I should not have done that, as that was rather immature, but I couldn't think of expressing my rage and sorrow in any other way. He saw this and walked into the room I was in. He picked it up and he threw it at me. It nearly hit my head, and I threw up my arms to defend myself. I then get up from where I was sitting, and he ran away instantly. This isn't the first time he's thrown things at me either. He once threw a pen that almost hit me in the eye. I was almost finished with my dinner, and I thought that this was the end of it, but I was mistaken. He walked into the room while I wasn't paying attention and jammed the fork he was using into my arm, and as I was trying to defend myself, he ran off again, but I couldn't bring myself to chase after him. I finished eating my dinner, and I cried to myself in my room. I felt alone and unsafe. Then I heard the sound of the garage door opening and my parents returning from their party. I tried to explain what happened, as I couldn't handle this myself. I tried talking it out with my little brother, but that didn't work either. Their response was the usual, "You need to deal with it yourself." I tried to explain again that I needed help, but they instructed me to work it out with him, and it wasn't their problem. Eventually, I went back to my room incredibly annoyed
annoyed. Now this afternoon, I had just come home from another long day at work, and I'm finally getting a break. I have finished all my work and need to wait for a special celebration next year in January, which is when I'll be returning there. I sat down, put everything away, and began watching some anime while playing a game on my Switch. I had already told my dad about my good news, so I was just waiting for my mom to get home so I could tell her as well. She eventually did come home, and I walked up to her room to tell her about my good news. I waited in the doorway and waited for her to get ready and put her stuff away before I could talk to her. As I stood there, I heard my little brother come up behind me, and he said the words, "Hey mom," in a welcoming voice, but then that voice turned into an aggravated tone for absolutely no reason. I remember him saying the words, "Oh my God," before stomping away. I tried asking him what was wrong later, but he told me to just get lost. I told my mom, and she was very happy for me as well. I thought my life was about to turn in the right direction, but I was wrong again. Later, when we were having dinner, my little brother decided to speak about last night and how awful I was to him. They believed all his lies, and I tried to explain what happened. Apparently, I kicked him first during that time that he kicked me, and I turned off the vacuum so he punched me. They believed this and berated me for acting like his parent and babysitter, even though that is exactly what they told me to do. I tried to talk to them about how they were wrong about all of this and tell them what exactly happened, as well as free myself from my brother's lies, but I was cut off again for apparently being disrespectful. My mother then started screaming and berating me about how her life was so hard, and she wants us to pretend to get along and be happy with each other, and she was basically just using me as her emotional punching bag yet again. I was resisting the urge to cry, knowing that it would only make things worse, because they would just yell at me for crying. My brother then brought up the fact that I said that my parents are using me as a scapegoat and a mental punching bag. I've never said that to him. He may have heard me muttering that at some point, but this only caused more yelling, and I felt incredibly stressed out. I tried to leave the table multiple times, but I was dragged back there verbally, even though I wanted to say no. I was forced to listen to how my little brother doesn't have any more compassion for me left, since I'm such a bad older brother. My parents tried to have us finish up with things we enjoy so they could escape to watch their scripted live action shows. Eventually, and after I left the table, I sat in my room and I cried. I felt awful. I was forced to listen to more lies and verbal abuse from my family, all because of one simple fact. I had the audacity to make dinner for my little brother, and I'm honestly just so sick of the lies. This is an awful living situation. Like, all things considered, your parents absolutely suck. The fact that they believe your little brother no matter what is deeply disturbing. I mean, if they had any sense about them, eventually, after all these moments of accusations against this spoiled, rotten little brother, they would eventually say, hey, maybe there's some kind of truth here. In my opinion, if you ever do have to babysit this spoiled, rotten brat again, I would start recording every interaction you have with him. Pull out your phone and record it on video. That way you can have visual proof that this kid is absolutely harassing you. It's unacceptable, and the way you're being treated is absolutely unfair, and it's borderline abuse. And hopefully you're able to get out of that living situation, because being treated like this on a daily basis is only going to make you more unhappy, and hopefully you can find some kind of solution. An entitled Karen freaks out because her dog accidentally ate her poop, and after I secure an appointment for this dog to see one of our vets, this entitled Karen freaks out and turns into an absolute monster, and I honestly could not be more in shock. Okay, so for this story, grab a chair and a hot drink and buckle up, because this one is a roller coaster ride. I used to work reception at a vet clinic in a very entitled, customer-prone area. As you might imagine, that gave me customer service horror stories to fill an entire epic saga and then some. I loved my job, and I loved my patients. They were all the best boys and girls in the world, no exceptions. And I loved most of my clients, who were genuinely nice and gentle and polite, as well as thankful for our hard work. But the bad ones really made it not worth the time. The bad experiences tend to be the ones that stick with us the most when working with the public, because of how wildly and unexpectedly our expectations of human behavior get flipped every day. You always think it can't get any more unbelievably absurd, and you are always proven wrong. I come to you bearing one of those stories as tribute, a tiny treat, if you will. We need to suffer together, and we're all here for the hot tea and the sweet, sweet catharsis. One day, I was minding my own business at the reception desk when the phone rang, and I picked it up as usual, greeting the caller as I always do. A voice shrieked from the other side, No greeting, no introduction, nothing. Just a singular phrase,
My dog ate my poop.
I was silent for a few seconds, trying to process if I had heard correctly, since we hear a lot of weird things in emergency clinics. But this was honestly new to me. I said, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" trying to clarify what she said.
My dog ate my poop.
Her voice was shaking and she was barely trying to contain a scream. This time, I couldn't contain myself. The words immediately flew out of my mouth, and I said, "How on earth did that happen?" Then the poor woman explains that she had left some stool samples on the sink, and when she wasn't looking, the dog just went there and decided they were an appropriate snack. I pulled up her file, and the dog is a fluffy, adorable, tiny lapdog who had the words care written all over his file, with very stern warnings from previous vets, meaning that he was a very spicy boy and he would bite. The owner was extremely nervous with this ordeal, and since I had never faced a similar situation, I asked her to be put on hold while I asked the vet what we should do in this situation. The vet was typing something on the computer when I got to her, and I tried my best to explain the situation. I look at them and I say, so we've got a client on the phone who is freaking out because her dog ate her poop. What should we do in this situation? The vet didn't take her eyes off the screen, completely unfazed. They said, that's nothing to worry about. It happens all the time. So I further clarified, no, I don't think you're getting it. The dog ate the owner's poo. The vet suddenly stopped for a moment. A few seconds later, she repeated the exact same words I had said over the phone. How did that happen? I did my best to explain, and while she was flabbergasted, it's one of those things that can and did happen, and in her opinion, it would probably be fine, maybe a rough tummy for a couple of days. But if for peace of mind, the owner wanted to come by, I could still offer her an appointment. I came back on the phone, gently reassuring the poor woman who was in a state that it should be fine, probably nothing to worry about, but I still offered her the appointment just to be sure, which she took for later that afternoon. I really took my time with her and managed to reassure her and calm her down. The moment that I sensed relief and gratefulness in her voice was the moment that out of nowhere she completely flipped. A new person emerged and started screaming nonstop at me because apparently we had messed up her dog's flea and worming medication order last time. I tried to understand what had gone wrong, but couldn't understand half of what she was saying, since she was going off while yelling at me and being extremely rude. At first glance, it seemed like a minor and honest mistake, which I was trying to understand and clarify. She wanted none of it. She was demanding an explanation, and I apologized for the mistake and told her that unfortunately, due to COVID, we were extremely understaffed, which was absolutely true. And while I didn't justify it, it would at least explain why there was a mistake in her order. This entitled Karen then tried to ask why it is we were unable to understand such simple orders, implying that COVID had also affected our brains. And then she went off again. I was speechless when I got off the phone. One of my colleagues saw the name on the screen and proceeded to tell me that she was the rudest client she had ever met. Well, I told her that she was coming in later the afternoon, and we were all really not looking forward to it. The moment she walked into the clinic, I knew it was her. She was a middle-aged woman with the cutest dog you could ever see, whom no one could touch because he would absolutely bite you. It was one of those cages where the dog's behavior unsurprisingly takes after the owner's. Because I knew a mega Karen was coming, I had mentally prepared and pulled out all of my options and was impossibly nice to her. I was super attentive and made her feel so welcome. She always seemed to be on the edge of evolving into a mega Karen at the slightest touch, but I managed to play the cards right and maintain her right at the balance. That was until she had her appointment and came out of the room. She came to my desk to pay for the consult and, just like before, out of nowhere, started screaming at me for no reason, saying that we were just stealing money from her and that the last time we had charged her extra money and that she wanted her money back. She basically just went off and was completely unhinged. I gathered all my patience, remained extra calm, and pulled out her bill history and told her that we would check it together to see if there was any mistake, and if so, I would be happy to correct it. Before doing it, I needed to check something with the vet, so I went into the consult room for about 10 seconds. When I came back, I found her all over my desk, on the computer, trying to read the screen over her glasses, and using the mouse and keyboard. I immediately snapped out of my happy customer service mode, and I thought to myself, are you kidding me? And I asked her way more politely than I probably should have to move away, and that she couldn't do that. At this point, we had one more person at the reception desk who was waiting for her dog to come out of surgery and was sunk on her chair just filming the entire interaction. In the end, she stepped away and I managed to never have to raise my voice. I went with her through her previous bills and managed to prove to her that nothing was wrong in the first place and that we never charged her extra for anything. Her attitude completely changed. She suddenly became very nice and compliant. Suddenly she was all smiles and giggles as if it had never happened, and she became very easy to work with. She called a taxi to take herself and her stupid little dog home, and when she was outside and boarding the taxi, I came to the door, waved at her, and said with the biggest smile on my face, "Ma'am, you forgot to pay." And at this point, she laughed and so did I. Live, laugh, love, am I right? I took the card machine outside and she paid for the consult. When I entered the consult again, the client who was filming earlier turned to me and said, "That was the most stellar customer service I have ever seen. I have worked retail and I would never have had that kind of patience that you just did." And we ended up laughing about the whole thing. It made me grateful that at least after the whole ordeal, someone was appreciative of my work, which is a big treat if you work with the public. What an absolute psychopath. The fact that this lady acts like this in public is super cringeworthy. I mean, you have to really be completely detached from society to cause this much of a fuss over something so simple. Like, is it really that big enough of a deal where you have to cause such a big uproar and invade this lady's personal professional space just to try and make a point about something that you're clearly wrong about? I mean, that's just unacceptable in my opinion. So hopefully this entitled Karen learns her lesson and treats people with more respect than this. Because in my opinion, the way you treat retail workers or customer service employees truly is a reflection of what kind of person you really are. And based on the way she acted, she is clearly not a very good person. Two entitled parents demand that their child hold the very venomous green mamba that their spoiled child is absolutely obsessed with at the zoo. But even after they are obviously told no, that's not going to happen, they freak out and cause a massive scene. And I honestly could not be more baffled by their stupidity. Here's what happened. So I work at a zoo and we're mostly closed for the winter, but our reptile house is still open because it's kept at the same temperature year round. I'm working and I'm showing people what the different animals are, and I'm answering their questions when a family consisting of two parents and one kid come into the reptile house. They're mostly just chilling and hanging out, doing what all visitors do. That is, until I hear the kid say that he wants to hold the green mamba. Normally, we let kids hold some of the reptiles if they are non-venomous and non-aggressive, but green mambas are venomous, and this one in particular gets really aggressive when near people. The parents come and they actually ask me if their kid can hold it, and I tell them that he can't for all the above reasons, and they then relay this message over to this kid. But this is not what this spoiled brat wanted to hear, because he then throws a massive fit. Apparently, his favorite color is green, and he only wanted to hold that snake. We had other green snakes, and thinking back, I should have just gotten a different snake and told him it was a green mamba to avoid all of this garbage, but at the time, I just didn't think of it. These two stupid parents actually come back to me again, asking if their son can hold the green mamba, and I firmly said, no, he can't do that. And after I said this, it was then the parents' turn to get upset. And not only upset, they got very loud, and they started calling me a terrible zookeeper, and that I should apparently just let their kid hold the snake. Eventually, and thankfully, my manager hears the commotion, and so did pretty much every other guest. My manager comes over to see what's wrong. They tell him that I'm not letting their kid hold a snake, when our zoo lets kids hold snakes all the time. There is really only 5 snakes that we let people hold, mostly because snakes don't like being held. So my manager, trying to fix the situation as best as he could, tells the parents and the kid to follow him, as he would find a snake that they actually could hold. But they didn't want to hold another snake. They stopped him in his tracks, and they said, "We want to hold this one, the green mamba," and they demanded that it had to be this one snake. He then looks at them and tells them exactly what I told them, stating that we can't let guests hold venomous snakes. And wouldn't you guess it, after hearing exactly what they didn't want to hear, they started yelling at my manager as well. Now, my manager doesn't have a lot of patience, so he just tells them to get out or he's going to call security to force them out. They promptly left, but not without yelling some terrible remarks towards us, basically saying that they're never coming back. And honestly, with all things considered, I truly hope they never come back. The parents in this story are literally just complete idiots. Like, there's literally no other way to describe them. They were demanding for their kid to hold a green mamba. For some context, if you get bit by a green mamba, it quite literally shuts down your ability to breathe. I mean, that does not sound like a good time. And with all that in consideration, this snake will literally unalive you. Like, there's just no way around it. And these stupid parents were like, no, but our kid wants to hold it, please.
Like, how stupid can you possibly get? So it's honestly probably really smart that the zookeepers say, nope, you're not holding a venomous snake, which is a lot different than a constrictor snake, but still equally as scary. I mean, snakes in general just freak me out for the most part, and I'm really not a big fan, so I just cannot understand anybody being like, ooh, let me hold that one. Like, nope, I'm out. I'm not gonna get near any of those. So hopefully these entitled parents educate themselves